Almighty God grant us the wisdom to make those decisions that are in the best interest of all of our residents. May the Heavenly Father of us all bless those who have given the ultimate sacrifice and service to our nation. And may you watch over and protect our servicemen and women, now guarding the gates of freedom. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all very much.
Take notice that this regular meeting of the mayor and council being held this 24th day of October 2022 has been advertised and posted in accordance with Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975.
Roll call, please.
Councilpersons Conti,
Here.
June 4, Mar,
Here.
Novak,
Here.
Anoha, Roberts.
Here.
Okay, we can go right on to new business, I believe, because we do not have any, no proclamations, any exec session. No, oh, actually, under appointments, we have to make some amendments.
We have to approve all minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry. I scrolled up too soon. Council President, approval of prior minutes of the mayor and council.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to approve the prior minutes of the mayor and council from September 12th, 2022 and from September 27th, 2022.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilpersons Mar,
Yes.
Conti,
Yes.
Novak,
Yes.
Anoha,
Yes.
Roberts.
Yes.
Okay, so now at this time, I just realized my microphone side as well. I apologize. Proclamations and presentations we haven't done for this evening. Any reason for exec session?
No.
Thank you very much. Under old business, we have a public hearing on the following ordinance, none to be listed, but we do have appointment amendments to be made in reference to our OEM. So previous meetings ago, we did appoint Mr. Bardsley in order to head up as the OEM coordinator after we had the resignation of our police chief. I would like to make a motion to have that appointment be for the 3 years, not just the remainder of the chief of police's term. And that is due to, do we want to say, is that
Yeah,
state?
you know what? It's just
Go ahead.
pursuant to state regs and a state ordinance.
Thank you. With that, we would also need to, I don't want to say the word extend, but we'd have to do reappointments for 2 additional OEM coordinators as well. That would be for deputy, which would be Captain Plumacher, and then Dave Civilli, also for 3 years under the title of deputy. Do I have a second for those?
Need a
A
motion.
motion and then a second
Make
for
a
those?
motion to make the appointments. Second.
And roll call, please, Jess.
Councilpersons Roberts,
Yes.
Conti,
Yes.
Mar,
Yes.
Novak,
Yes.
Anoha,
Yes.
Okay, and now we can move forward with the introduction of the following ordinances. I see one.
Ordinance number 33-22, an ordinance supplementing and amending ordinance number 437-19, fixing the salaries of certain borough officials, officers, and employees for the year 2022.
That's Administration and Finance, Councilwoman Novak. This is introduction, so we don't need to open to the public.
November 14th, prevailing time. Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilpersons Novak,
Yes.
Conti,
Yes.
Mar,
Yes.
Anoha,
Yes.
Roberts.
Yes.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to move to consent agenda resolutions. I feel like my microphone is still farther away. I'll open to the public for any and all comments on consent agenda resolutions only. Please step to the microphone, Mr. Robinson. State your name and address, please, for the record.
Thank you very much. Mayor, members of the council, Jim Robinson, 11 Burrell Square in Parlin. First of all, I want to thank you for 2022-277 rescinding the resolution authorizing the study on that property on Ernstton Road near Oak Tree. Secondly, I want to address 2022-274. I spoke about this at the last meeting. Oh, how much, that's a memorandum of understanding with Port Authority. How much are they going to pay?
Use the
On range.
I thought it was I think it's per usage. Is it 500 per day? I'm not sure.
The
Oh, do you need the?
Jim, it's $500 per day.
$500 per day. Okay, well, I spoke about this last week. and Mary, you were kind enough to provide some information about the cleanup, and I went back and I listened to the tape, and I didn't hear what was done prospectively to ensure no future contamination. And I don't know much about this. I know that when I was chairman of the planning board raised a concern, and
You mean
things were done.
contain, Jim?
so I did a little bit of research because I don't know a lot about this, and it wasn't hard to do it. And I saw that the EPA identified lead contamination associated with shooting ranges as an environmental hazard in a report published in 2005. And that's not specifically ranges over well fields, it's in general. And I shared with the council, I apologize, I only did it today. I shared the EPA's best management practices for lead at outdoor shooting ranges, which, by the way, is supported by the National Rifle Association, the National Shooting Sports Foundation, and the Wildlife Management Institute. And I just read through that quickly over the weekend, and I did see this from that manual. It says, during and after periods of rain, stormwater runoff may wash lead particles or lead compounds off the range. If there are surface water bodies such as lakes, rivers, or wetlands down gradient, the potential for lead to adversely affect the surrounding environment is even greater. Further in that report, it says, wooded areas surrounding ranges may increase the potential for wildlife lead contamination. And then somewhere else, there was a disclaimer that said, and I quote, this manual is not to be used as a substitute for consultation with scientists, engineers, attorneys, and other appropriate professionals who should be called upon to make specific recommendations for individual range design and lead management. Now, my understanding was from the conversation that I had last meeting, or the last public meeting, not the special meeting. And then I think former Councilman Olszewski had some conversations with Borough Engineer Samuel, that our borough engineer, neither the borough engineer nor the Environmental Commission were consulted about the construction of those additional ranges, because once upon a time there was one, and I think there are now 4, 5, or 6. Okay. Now, I was thinking about this. We spent $250,000 for the engineer to design 2 baseball fields and parking lots, but we didn't ask their advice before we potentially contaminate our well fields again. And I say again, because you folks know, I don't know if everybody in the public knows, that our well fields have been contaminated by industry. They've been cleaning up there for the last 20 years. I think, Jay, you said you hope that in 5 years we'll be able to use them. So let me ask this. Who did provide professional advice on the construction of whatever ranges are there now, the 4, 5, or 6?
And this is, when that was cleaned up, wasn't there a containment put in there so this would never happen again, that all the lead would be stained when it was used?
We weren't involved with the study that was done probably, 25, 30 years ago concerning that. I know that that study recommended management practices to continue to utilize it as a range.
They recommended what, Jay?
Best management practices to how to go
Okay.
through and utilize it as a range, to continue to use it as a range.
Okay.
Whether how that's been implemented, I can't answer since we haven't been involved.
I'm pretty sure there was some sort of containment in there, but we should check on that.
There might have been, but was that done by the Department of Public Works? That our own engineer wasn't involved in that.
That was not done by the department.
Well, who was it done by?
It was a professional company.
Well, who was involved with the construction, and why would our own engineers not have been involved with the construction? And who developed the lead management plan? And are we following those best practices? Do we know who developed the lead management plan?
There was a professional, but we're going back 30 years. I don't remember all.
Well, we're going back 30 years, but it's continuing to go on right
I
now.
realize that, so I don't really remembered the names, but there were, it was done by.
But the engineer wasn't involved.
It may have been another firm then.
I'm sorry?
It may have been another firm, from that, within that time period, it may have been another firm.
I advised the councilman, another firm performed that lead study that was done 25, 30 years ago. We weren't involved with that. I don't know who was involved with the construction of
So-
additional facilities.
Nobody knows.
Mayor, you know what we can do is, if you have questions concerning the lead management program, I can certainly talk to the chief tomorrow and ask him about.
Well, I definitely do have, I appreciate Jim's comments and I appreciate the paperwork that you sent over, the emails that you sent over.
Yeah.
So it's my and I apologize, Jay, I was inquiring on something on the dais. So Mr. Samuels, CME has not been consulted in reference to this?
No, Mayor, we weren't involved with the study that was done years ago. We haven't been involved with anything with that range ever. So
Well, how about with this memorandum of understanding, the idea to let other folks come in?
we haven't been involved.
And I'll tell you what my concern is. We all know that Speaker Coughlin got an $850,000 grant for security around the well fields. So I think you can't walk your dog there. I think you can't go fishing there anymore. I've heard people complain that you can't hike, but you can go in and shoot. And not just our department, but the Port Authority. And I understand why they want to do that. I understand why we want to cooperate with them. I understand all of that, but not if it is going to risk our already contaminated water supply that we have spent millions on. I mean, Duhernal was purchased because our water supply is contaminated. We've been cleaning it for 20 years. It's going to go on maybe 5 or 10 more years. And I want to be clear. I don't have an opinion on this, whether this is good or bad, the right thing to do or not the right thing to do. I'm not a scientist. I'm not an engineer. I'm not a member of the council. I haven't done these studies, but there are folks whose job it is to do those studies. I'm not on the Environmental Commission. I know from looking just what I looked at this weekend, lead bullets meet the statutory definition of solid waste. So is that something that ought to be over the well fields? We're supposed to keep records on the number of rounds fired over a period of time at the range. Do we do that?
We have a range master, so I'm sure there is. I can get all of these questions answered.
Okay, all right, that would be good. Now, maybe Jay, you know about this. I understand that lime can mitigate the impact of the lead. Would spreading lime there be harmful to the well fields or?
I think that was one of the original recommendations, that the soil is treated on a regular basis by adding lime to reduce the acidity associated
Okay, so
with it.
that in itself that would not be an issue, right?
Do that would not be an issue.
Yeah, okay, good, all right. And I think we ought to know now how we control the runoff, given its proximity to the lagoons there and the well fields underneath. But what I really think is, and I just want to clarify this, I don't have an opinion on this, whether this is good or bad, whether we should do it or shouldn't do it. I understand generally the idea of cooperating with other law enforcement agencies is a good thing. I'm all for that. But the engineer and the Environmental Commission need to have input into this before it's approved. That's why we have an Environmental Commission. That's why we have an engineer to do things. And I think before outside agencies or others are allowed to shoot lead into our well fields, which are in the process of the 20-year contamination cleanup, that we need to do some more work. More research is needed on this. We might find that these concerns have no merit, have no basis. And if that's true, that's fine. But I think given the fact that we have already not allowed, but unfortunately our well fields have been contaminated through no fault of our own, to invite somebody else in for $500 a pop to potentially recontaminate something that we've spent, I don't know how much money, but I know at least 20 years and maybe 5 or 10 more years cleaning up, just doesn't make sense. So I would ask you to not act on this tonight and go very cautiously and do what you ought to be doing, involve the environmental commission, involve the engineer, and get the best advice possible. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jim. So anybody else from the council, anybody else from the public have any additional comments on consent agenda resolutions? Come on up, Ken. Then we can have discussion as council about how we want to proceed with that.
Ken Olszewski, 108 North Edward Street. I want to speak to on what Jim just talked about, Resolution 274, authorizing the Port Authority to use the range. We go back to when I was on the council, and specifically the years of 1990 to 1994, 91 to 94, when I was in charge of public safety. I don't know how many PDs were using our range. It's too far back for me to remember specifically, but I think there were quite a few. And we stopped them. I don't know the specific details. I certainly didn't. I was the guy, the go-to guy to go to Chief Sprague at the time and say, we were going to stop this. But certainly it wasn't on my side because I don't have the expertise to say that we shouldn't do this. But it was stopped at that time. And I think, as Jim had just said, I know the concern was lead and our aquifer. So I talked to Jay, I asked Jay, and Jay said, I don't really know anything about the range, Ken. He said, perhaps David does. Just to back up a little bit, I didn't stay for the second meeting last time, but I did talk to Chief, took him out in the hall and talked to him about the same thing I just brought up to you. And he said he was going to do some further looking into it. So then I called Jay, and Jay said, I really don't know anything about the range, Ken. Perhaps David might be more of help. So I called David Samuel, and I talked to him for a while on it. He certainly did remember it. He said he hasn't been involved in anything locally. And I know the range has changed over the years since I'm talking about, and I don't, they constructed more ranges, I believe. I don't know who constructed them. I don't know what was the basis for it, and I don't know what's the expertise. But David, and David didn't tell me that, but he did remember it. And well, it's not my purpose to come here and relay a conversation with Dave Samuel. I don't even remember it all. I didn't take notes. Two things I can tell you from that conversation. When I called him, he didn't say, oh, gee, Ken, that's no problem at all. That's one thing he didn't say. The second thing he did say, any kind of activity regarding the aquifer is and can be an issue and should be treated very carefully, cautiously. So I wasn't here when Jim started talking, but basically, I guess I'm going to say some of the same thing. I don't know whether we can use this range at this time for the Port Authority or any other police department. In my days that I worked for the Port Authority, I was very close with the police. I supplied them with ammunition, as a matter of fact, from purchasing. But I don't know the answer to it. I just want to tell you my experience and tell you that I am concerned about it. I'm concerned about water because, again, when I was in the council, one of the years I was chairman of water, and I was involved in water and did a lot of questioning of our water system long before I ever got on the council. And I believe we have something like 9 or 10 wells, and they are shut down at the present time for potable water due to contamination. And I guess it's allegedly from Hercules. Is that correct, Jay? Yeah, so contamination from Hercules. So they're shut down. However, 4 of our wells are used to supply non-potable water to Red Oak, the energy plant. down at Journey Mill Road. So we are selling water to Red Oak that's non-potable water. It's for cooling purposes. And I asked David in the conversation, what the hell is this remediation going to be done with our well field? How many years is going on? It must be going on 20 years. And of course, this is all with DEP approval. And David said that in the last year or so, they've stepped it up because I guess everyone's concerned with the pace of this remediation. And he threw out something like perhaps 5 years or so that it might be clean by that time. I'm sure that's not a promise from him. That's only something that he's probably worked on and heard a little bit of and probably got some hope for. So my concern is the water supply. I've been very involved in it over the years. As a matter of fact, I was very instrumental in the purchase of the Duhernal system. I was one of the first people when I was on the council to talk about that. And of course, at that time, it was simply purchasing the national lead share. And as a matter of fact, that wasn't easy because there was a law in New Jersey that you could not have a public and private partnership on a water system. So we got that law changed. But then Senator Bennett and Assemblyman Jeff Warsh got that law changed in Trenton to allow, it was one of those things where a community of X number of thousand that's located close to a red light and blah, blah, blah. So I don't think they changed it for the state. They changed it for Sterling to allow us to get into that partnership. So I've had a keen interest in water for many, many years in Sterling. I am concerned about this, and we all know that water is something. You see the building, the things going on in town here. Yeah, right through East Brunswick and see what goes on at Tices Lane, that big building project. You see what's in South Amboy and Old Bridge. And it doesn't take too much smarts to know that water is a very precious commodity. You can never have enough of it. I hope that our wells become active in not too long a time. So maybe we can go out and be a seller of water to some other people in the area. So my suggestion would be probably the same as Jim's, unless you've got expertise telling you this is not a problem. I would hold off on this until you got some kind of expertise about it, because the last thing we need to do is have another contamination of our well fields. The last one is going on, as I say, probably over 20 years. Thank you very much. Sure.
Do you think we should stop using it entirely? I'm not really sure what the difference is,
Stop using the well fields, you
Do
mean?
you think that this lead from them?
Oh, that we should stop using the range. I don't, Mary, I don't have the expertise to know that, but it's a long time ago. I'm going to say there were at least 4 or 5 police that you might remember some of them. But I think there was maybe 4 or 5 police departments at least that used the range. And it wasn't easy. No, I don't say it wasn't easy. There weren't too many people that had a smile on their face when you did this, especially Chief Sprague, because let's face it, it's kind of a little bit of I can borrow a cup of flour from you when you need a cup of sugar, I'm going to be giving it to you. So I think there's a lot of say, well, we're using Cerebel's range. So I don't know the answer to that if we should stop, but it might be something we should look at. But to multiple.
Remember that. I think we told them that they could only use it for themselves until we did the cleanup, but we have some questions that we still need.
Yeah, and I don't know what we did.
Remember that far back. either.
To be honest with you, one of the things I never saw in the borough was the range. I'd been down and toward the whole water supply when I was in and stuff. I never actually physically saw the range, but I was very involved in it. And we stopped everybody else from using it. And I don't know how I understand now there's 4 or 5 ranges there. I don't know how they were constructed, who constructed it, if they had any expertise or not. So, but I'm just saying, I think we ought to be a little cautious about that. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Ken. Anybody else from the public wish to speak on consent agenda resolutions? I don't see anybody online either. Do you, Jean Marie?
Okay,
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to close the public portion.
I will,
Second.
yeah, well, I was going to make I was going to ask for a motion to close the public portion, but somebody had already said it prior to. So, so ladies and gentlemen, at this point, we need affirmation of closing the public portion. Is there do you want a roll call or do you want all in favor? All in favor to close the public portion?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, the question now comes to the council about how you wish to handle that resolution in reference to 2022274, based on comments you heard from the public. What we would be looking to do then is, Mike, table this until further information is gathered. Anybody from the council wish to comment? Yeah,
Second.
Yeah.
okay, roll call, please. Sure, let me know when you're ready, Jess.
Mike. The word
No, I'll table it because you can bring it back up.
Council-
You asking 4 seconds or? I'm trying
No,
to-
this is.
No, they already tabled and seconded.
Councilpersons Novak,
Yes.
Conti,
Yes.
June 4.
She just joined, so I don't know if you
She'll
wish to abstain. You can abstain if you wish because you did miss that conversation. If that's, rather than voting on something that you did miss some of the discussion for.
What it is.
Let's let Mike give you a little
Councilman,
update.
it's just a motion to table for further investigation of the use of the range for the police department and if there's any and all lead management policies in place.
The concern was, if you remember, I believe Captain Kiernan had reached out to yourself. I know that I spoke to him as well. And while I think that this is a great opportunity for us to kind of partner with other agencies. Some of the questions from the residents came in reference to how this impacts our well fields because of potential lead contamination. It was also mentioned that, I believe it was Mr. Robinson and Ken Olszewski stated that they have not, no one has conferred with CME, our engineers. Jay, I think you can confirm that as far as could this have negative impacts or what other remediation can be taken to keep that lead from potentially impacting our water wells over there. So without having had our engineers look at this, tabling the resolution for now until we get a little bit more information, then bringing it back up. That was the motion that was made by Councilwoman Novak and seconded by, I believe it was Council President or Donna. Or-
It's basically an opportunity to review the lead management policy of the police department for the range.
So that's where we are. If you don't feel comfortable at this point because you weren't involved in part of that conversation,
She could abstain.
she could abstain, or if you are comfortable with that, then clearly vote.
Yeah, I'll abstain from it, but I remember the last meeting that we did have when our acting chief was here. He did answer some of those questions. If we can actually go back to review the YouTube clip, he did answer some of those questions.
Yeah, tomorrow.
So we can table it if you want to do further investigation on it. But if you go back and you watch that clip, he did mention some answers to the question.
Thank you for that. So that's going to, you're going to abstain for now? Yeah, okay.
Mar,
Yes.
Manoha,
And before we answer, we just want to express thanks to the public for following up, bringing more details. And, with that being said, looking forward to further conversations within our committees this coming week. And with that being said, yes.
Roberts,
We're voting just to table this one.
correct.
Yes.
Okay, that takes care of it. I appreciate that from the residents as well. Lead is something that we have to be very careful with. As we know, we right now are doing major improvements at a very costly point to our taxpayers and to our budget just regarding state required lead cleanup. So I think it's good to get that information. Yeah.
And Captain Kieran said that he doesn't mind also coming in, so I'll reach out to him and ask him if he can come in and also do like a presentation so
Yeah.
that the public can feel more comfortable and ask him all unnecessary questions.
That would be great. Thank you very much. Okay. Yeah, so what I'm looking for now is we're going to need to ask for a motion to adopt.
Motion, Mayor, may I ask a question about one of the resolutions?
Yeah, of course. Or you could do that now or at roll call. It's up to you.
I'd like to address it now before roll call, to open it up for discussion for 2022-275, the RFP for our professional for the special investigation.
275.
Yeah, I'm
I
sorry.
don't think it's 275. Yep, there you go.
For RFP professionals to,
276. I had to make a change in the 276.
I'm so sorry. Then 276, the resolution to advise for RFPs for professionals to conduct a special investigation of the Saraville Economic Redevelopment Agency. I did look through the minutes, and that was to also create a committee. But what I did not see, do we have the RFP drawn up? Because before I vote on that, I would like to know the objectives and scope, what years and what they'd be looking for before we vote on a request for information, just to have an idea of what we're asking. I don't want it to be, from project management standpoint, I know those who are in that world know that we have to have some sort of scope identified. What years are we going to look at? What objectives do we have for that report? And there is also a committee to be selected, and just to keep some of the members on the council who were on SARA during that time, I think it would be appropriate if those would not be on the committee or select the committee for that.
I think that might actually then disqualify almost every single person up here except for two.
Well, I think Councilwoman Marr
I was not on Sarah.
was not on SARA. I have only just started with SARA, so I'm out what I would consider the scope. And just because Mary and Vinnie, Councilwoman Novak and Councilman Conti have served, I think they will be unscathed, but just to eliminate any impropriety, it would just be for selecting the committee to choose the professional and determine the scope and objectives of that commission, that special investigation.
I don't think that that's accurate. You can't just have a separate committee choose the professionals that are going to be hired.
And that's
You'd
my
have to have-
understanding from the minutes,
Mike?
because I believe there's a committee discussed. So if there is not going to be a committee, we don't have to discuss that. And that would be fine. And we would just amend, update the minutes here to say that we're not going to have a committee for that selection.
One of the things that I would hate to see happen is for a closed door committee to turn around and determine professionals that would be investigating something so important and potentially legally damaging to our town, and to keep things as more open and transparent. That's the point of this. Under the RFPs, I think that actually everybody agreed up here that it was important to move forward with an investigation and to hire outside counsel and auditors. When it comes to the redevelopment agency, my feelings is that we should not just be looking at financial audits of the redevelopment agency, because they go through audits yearly typically. But I do believe that the investigation also should include from attorneys or whatever other professionals could handle this type of situation outside of what the prosecutor and other state agencies may be doing, is the actual dealings, voting, contracts, and potential discussions with developers of members of the redevelopment agency. I think that that kind of goes all in that nut, yeah.
Right, I would just like that kind of scope and objective outlined before, so we know what we're going to be getting a professional to perform. So
Right.
that's my ask for that particular resolution item.
I agree, and I think it should include not just the redevelopment agency. That was important for other organization, for recreation as well. And
And that would go to the scope of what we're asking.
Mhm.
So I think that should be spelled out.
Speaking of scope, right? Just
Yeah.
want to confirm. Just want to make sure, it sounds like members of the economic agency who serve on council will still be allowed to vote for the professionals that are going to investigate the economic agency? It sounds like that's what seems to be being pushed right now, or no, am I mistaking that?
We wouldn't have enough people left. If we said that we wouldn't have enough people voting.
Why do you-
Need at least
you
4
mind
people
confirming that?
voting.
What makes it difficult is if you
3
exclude,
of us.
if you exclude individuals that, from the council that serve on the redevelopment agency, we would not have enough voting members in order to allow business to actually happen. In essence, I think, Mike, what is that mechanism called that in the interest of
Rule of necessity.
rule of necessity? So the rule of necessity would basically take precedent for anybody that would have had a conflict or had to abstain. They would then be allowed to vote anyway. Myself included, because I served on Sarah as well. It doesn't matter when I was a council person, depending on how far we wish to go back as far as this investigation goes. I also don't think that just because somebody is a newly elected or newly appointed person to the redevelopment agency, there's been business transacted, and those contracts may have had things that you've had to vote on since. It gets very hairy. It gets very hairy. So I do think that people that have served on the redevelopment agency would have to be a part of this discussion as well. And their votes would stand as far as what they felt most comfortable with when it came to voting on the professionals up here.
So we're saying that folks who didn't serve during that time period, is that where we're at? Is that-
No, I think we're at the point now where regardless of whether or not you served on the redevelopment agency under the legality of vote of necessity, this entire governing body then would have to be allowed to vote on those
Yes.
professionals.
It's called the rule of necessity. So you can't exclude everyone. You still have to conduct business. So what I can do is I can, matter of fact, that's what I'm coming to see Denise tomorrow is prepare your RFPs and then, get draft RFPs to you next 1 or 2 meetings. And then you could look at the scope and then you could debate them.
Yeah.
So why don't you give Denise and I and Jess an opportunity to look at the RFPs
Okay.
and prepare them, and then we'll prepare draft, and then you could take a look at them.
Before they go out for bid. Yeah.
Yeah.
So would we
Question,
be,
right?
Go ahead, Councilman, and wait, I'm sorry. I think he was questioning what you had asked.
I'm grateful. Is it more on, it seems as though the whole governing body will be able to vote, or just as many as is needed? How
You
do you
can,
mean?
no, everyone can vote.
Is
This
that
is, hold on, wait a minute, Mr. Robbins. This is just about.
If it's on the grounds of as,
On the RFPs is what you're talking about here is the resolution 2023276. That's what you're talking about. What I am saying is I will prepare RFPs in draft and so that you can look at them before they go out. So then you can
True.
discuss the scope.
it's true. And so maybe this conversation is not appropriate for specifically advertising the RFPs, maybe what I'm alluding to. is
Write them before you can have.
I have to write them first.
Right. And what I'm referring to is not necessarily a question on how it's advertised, but more on the decision after the advertisement, right? So I want to confirm that what I'm talking about is appropriate at this time to discuss, or is it strictly 222-276 in reference to advertising strictly? Or can I?
No, all we're talking about is 2022-276.
But what he's asking is confirmation on what exactly does that entail? If we're just talking about creating
He
RFPs,
reminded me on this. I took a second look at gratitude, and technically it's strictly on advertising. Is that? I'm just gonna ask my question regardless, right? Overall, as a governing body, is it all of us that's gonna vote eventually on, as Donna brought up, as Councilman Roberts brought up, or is it just as many as will be necessary? Because from the phrase you mentioned legally is, I'm not sure what you called it, but it sounded like it was.
Rule of necessity.
Right, so how many is necessary then, right?
Well,
Is it the whole governing body or just a certain number? And if so, what is
I
that?
help with that clarification?
maybe we
May I?
should be contacting the League of Municipalities also. And see, here's where this is tricky. None of us have ever had to do an investigation like this before,
And
unless you have, Mike.
I may clarify, the
Okay.
first part of my question was that in the minutes, there was something that I noticed that I did not recall about about assigning a committee. And that would typically be 3 people from council. So if we're not going to assign a committee and we're going to go to the, what did you call it, of necessity?
Rule of
The
necessity.
rule of necessity, then we do without the committee. And we go to rule of necessity so that we are all voting on it. Am I clear on that?
So I guess the issue is what, so what the mayor was saying is everyone has served on the committee, or most people have served on this committee. And so the question is, if the scope includes those individuals who served, would they be able to vote on these RFPs? A better choice would be not to vote on them, right? So that there is no appearance of impropriety, but you still have the rule of necessity so that, I forgot the number of people you told me served, but most of them serve. So you would then invoke that rule to allow the RFPs to continue.
Now,
We want the RFPs written before we approve advertisement.
Right, that's what we talked about.
right, that's
And we're
where,
agreement
that's
on
where
that.
we can't advertise without. So let me, and again, yeah, I just want to sort out one thing in my mind for a second, Because when this initially happened, and again, there's no rule book for me as far as how to handle this. This is an unfortunate circumstance that we find ourselves in, and wanting to do things and check off every single line that we can to make this fair, open, and appropriate. So in my world of committees, when you do something in a committee, the committee doesn't have carte blanche say over what the elected officials would then be able to vote on, unless I misunderstand that. I don't necessarily disagree with having a committee formed, but within that committee, if we are looking to keep that committee of non-SARA members, there's only 3 up here. So I'm not necessarily opposed to having that committee, but at this point, so there would only be Councilwoman Mar, Councilman Anoha, and Councilwoman Juneforth, which would then make up that committee if we were looking to restrict it to non-SARA members.
And if it was non-voting Sarah members, I don't believe we conducted any business at the one meeting that I attended.
I would be careful with it anyway, just to try and keep it completely open, I really don't know what's been done within SARA right now. So I do think that the only people that have never served or been appointed to the redevelopment agency, and one of the things we have to investigate is appointments in general of the redevelopment agency we're still looking for.
Pass the consent agenda and then we can just talk.
Well, I think I have to kind of square this in my mind here a little bit. I understand the importance of moving through something, but I have to square this in my mind with the attorney. So a committee is not necessarily a bad thing, but it would be restricted to only those 3 individuals. Moving forward, though, when it comes to the voting of the professionals, that is where the other points that Councilman Anoha was questioning comes into play. It would be my understanding, but I'm not an attorney, that the vote of necessity may in fact be what would govern who can vote on those RFPs and the professionals brought in. But I could be wrong on that.
I think you're accurate.
Now, I know that the public portion is closed, but I am curious to know what Mr. Robinson would, only because I know that you've dealt with a little bit. I will entertain your comments for a few seconds because I think it's important that we look to.
I appreciate that. When I was president of New Jersey Planning Officials, one of the seminars I gave at the league, there were 2 that I remember. One, ironically, was called Staying Out of Trouble, and the other was on conflicts of interest. And we talked, and Mike, you know the folks who are, they're some of the best municipal attorneys in the state that sit around that table. And one of the things we talked about was the rule of necessity. And my suggestion would be, based on my understanding and what I learned at those and what I taught at some of those conferences, was that, picking up on what Councilman Noha said, and I don't know if you learned this at the league, but you have those who can sit, who have no conflict. And it's very interesting. We have to frame this. we are talking about conflicts.
Right.
So it's important that the body that is going to investigate conflicts be conflict-free as much as possible. So my suggestion is that you have those who have no conflicts, and then you draw on the basis of seniority, other council members who may have a conflict until you get to the number that you need to form a quorum, not necessarily to vote, because Mike, I think you would advise the council that in a situation, for instance, on minutes, if you have folks who weren't there and other circumstances like that, you can pass minutes on a 6-person council by 1 vote, right? If the others are there to make the quorum, 1 vote, you can pass minutes. So I would suggest that the same kind of thing apply here. And rather than the committee, maybe you do a council of the whole, a committee of the whole, which is the
Yeah.
council. And you have those who are not in conflict first, and then based on seniority, then you pick to get the 4th one that gives you the conflict. And that person may opt to abstain, which would be fine and might be the wise thing to do, to abstain. Then the other 3 who don't have a conflict could vote and make the decision. That's just my suggestion.
Okay, thanks, Jim.
Thanks.
I think that makes sense. I think
Yeah.
that's kind of where we were
Yeah, we're
anyway.
involved in
Yeah,
that. Yep.
at this point. So I appreciate those comments.
Mayor, may I make a motion to remove the resolution in question from? It's on. May I make a motion to eliminate the, since I had the wrong number, Mike? 2022-276, remove it from the consent agenda items tonight by tabling.
And that is for what reason? Just, is it because of the word advertised?
It is because I do not know what we're advertising for. That was the second part of the question, the scope and duration. And you also said you wanted to expand the scope from Sarah to recreation. So I do want to know the scope before putting any approval behind it.
Yeah, I think,
Our attorney said that he would write that out so that we would all have the opportunity to review that before we vote. I think that would be the wise thing to do.
I don't have issue with that because of the terminology in here as advertised. But I do want to make sure that we're continuing the process forward, because one of the things we want to do is expedite but not rush inappropriately. And one of the things that we heard at our previous special meeting was this idea that, we want to move forward with business, but obviously we all, most of us have concerns about moving forward with business appropriately. So Mike, in this circumstance, I think what we're all looking to do is before we advertise, so maybe we can turn around and authorize the borough clerk and borough attorney to draft the RFPs instead of advertise, right, to draft RFPs. And then,
We just remove this from here and just have another resolution read in full.
There's a motion to table.
but it hasn't been seconded yet because we were
And then,
haven't.
If you want me to, I'll just get the RFPs done for you so that you can adopt them at the next meeting or the following meeting, whichever's convenient.
It's important to do it whatever way is going to be most appropriate. So your recommend,
Possible to add cost, approximate cost to what this would cost the taxpayer?
Usually when they do an RFP, you'll have a couple of people come in, they're gonna tell you what they're gonna charge, and then you can pick. Yeah.
But we haven't even determined what it is that we're going to
Yeah.
investigate, which is my concern about advertising until we know that. So it's.
Because this
I would take
specifically
it out,
says
adver-
Sarah.
Advertise
Yeah.
for Sarah, and
We
if we
want more
want
than
to.
that.
yeah, so can we just authorize then Mike to turn around and work on, Mike,
Without advertising.
the RSPs
Yeah,
without
I'll
advertising?
do them in draft, but for administrative purposes, just, there's a motion to table 276.
Because
And just
I
create
don't
a
want to
new one.
advertise until we know what we're advertising.
And then if you give me authorization, I'll prepare a draft and get it to the next meeting.
Okay, I think that seems most appropriate at this. We don't want to advert. Okay, so we have a second to table 276. Okay, we're all okay, okay, and then we'll do a roll call on that.
Councilpersons Roberts,
Yes.
Conti,
Yes.
June 4,
Yes.
Mar, Novak,
Yes.
Noha,
Okay, so we're good with that. Now what we would need is, oh, I'm sorry, were we still, did we complete? Well, no, what I wanted to say, yeah, no, I meant complete on the vote. So now what we would need is a motion to authorize Mike Dupont to write a proposal, how do you want it,
I make a motion
to do
for
draft
our
RF?
attorney to draft the specific RFP for the special investigation.
Okay, so that's where we are now. The motion is to authorize separate reso to authorize Mike Dupont to create draft RFPs for us to review. That,
Second.
okay, and now we'll
We're
do,
not adding this to the resolutions.
No, we're gonna
No,
have
no.
to memorialize
No,
it till last
yeah.
time. The next meeting.
Councilpersons Roberts,
Yes.
Conti,
Yes.
June 4.
We're voting again on the same exact matter?
No, no,
Authorizing
we're
the
going-
Attorney to prepare the RFPs.
Okay,
to
yes.
do draft RFP.
Yes.
And then we can review those as,
Mar,
Yes.
Novak,
Yes.
Noha.
Yes.
okay. Now we're going to move to, we'll ask for a motion to adopt the RFPs, consent agenda resolutions with the exception made.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda resolutions with the modifications made.
Second,
Okay, roll call again.
Councilpersons Mar,
Yes.
Conti,
Yes.
June 4.
Yes, with abstaining to 22-274.
You already did it. That's
We already removed
Oh,
that.
yeah.
Novak,
Yes.
Noha,
Yes.
Roberts.
Yes.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, Borough Attorney, anything?
No report, Mayor.
Wonderful. Public portion on that ain't all matters. Jim, I see nobody online. Do you see anybody online? Thanks, Jean Marie. Our pinch hitter for tonight.
Thank you, Mayor. Jim Robinson, 11 Burrell Square. Last time I was here, Mayor, you expressed some concerns about the grant for the ball fields and whether that was done out in the open and whatever. So you called a special meeting and, or the council called a special, somebody called a special meeting. Who, that doesn't matter, but this is my concern. That meeting was not on Zoom and the agenda was not posted online. I understand even the legislators who had a role in this couldn't even join in because it wasn't on Zoom. I would have been interested in hearing how they could state an application that had not yet been filed that you know, they were gonna make sure that we got. So I think it's important. Mr. Dupont, with all due respect, I listened to the tape, to the audio, and you said, well, it's not required that they be on Zoom, and it's not required that the agenda be posted. And I agree with you. That's not required.
And I'm gonna take a note on
It's
that.
not required that any meetings be on Zoom. I don't think the law requires that we have benches here or a clock there or microphones or this podium or pictures on the wall or the big screen TVs that we all paid for. But we have those things because it makes sense. It's an accommodation to the public who wants to know what's going on and who wants to voice their concern. And I was one of the members of the public who wanted to do that. And it wasn't until, so I think that was a 6:30 meeting. I think it was like 6 o'clock. I went online and I quickly sent an email of folks saying, hey, I can't find this. So, you know, it's not even required that we spend millions of dollars on baseball fields either, but we do that too as an accommodation to the public. So the fact that it's not required, respectfully, Mike, that doesn't hold water. We normally do it. We do it for every other meeting. We have, I don't know, what do you have, 24, 25 meetings a year, 23 of them are online on Zoom, and I couldn't help.
Didn't we just start Zoom earlier this year, though?
I'm sorry?
We haven't used Zoom prior to 6 months ago. So we haven't Zoomed every meeting.
In the last 6 months.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, no, that's not true. That's
And
not
not
true.
special
Councilman. Thank
meetings,
you
though,
for
either.
Interrupting, but that isn't true, because let me tell you what that reminds me of. When Arsenal came in, that meeting was here. And it wasn't hybrid, and it was standing room only, and it was in the midst of the pandemic. And it was standing room only, and that was not on Zoom. That was not a hybrid meeting, and that was done on purpose. That was done on purpose. Because they wanted to get that through, and they didn't want people to be able to communicate from home. In fact, when you came up, you couldn't even use the podium. The podium was turned around. So, no, I thank you for your interruption, but your timing was wrong. Okay, so my question is this: since that was a departure from the usual practice, somebody had to make a decision to do that. Who and why?
Jim, if I can interrupt you.
Sure.
So this was a special meeting, right? Normally, special meetings are not hybrid.
Why?
Technology, well, first and foremost, technology didn't exist when we were doing some of our special meetings a couple of years ago.
We did have that
Now-
technology on the 17th, though, right?
That's
Yes.
correct.
We had it the week before, we had it tonight, we had it on the 17th.
Correct. However, there was some staffing issues that the clerk's office experienced. And so we couldn't do the hybrid. Just
So
couldn't
the
do both of
agenda
them.
couldn't be put online because of staffing
You know,
issues?
again, that's a good point. But that's a good point, Jim. We're trying our best to make sure, and if you listen to me online,
Well, you know,
we were trying to be transparent.
it just
didn't necessarily
adds
make
to suspicion.
Mr. Robinson, if I may, I believe our grant writer is online, Stephanie Gundrum, if she's ready to answer any questions, if you'd like.
Hear the audio online now, you couldn't participate, and I wanted to participate. I didn't, just like I said about the well fields, I haven't made up my mind. Generally, I think those are good things, but we departed from usual practice. I don't know why, and what I would like to do is have this.
We did not depart from usual business.
The usual practice is every meeting is hybrid.
Special meetings are usually not hybrid.
I-
We usually have our special meetings in 3:10 and they're not hybrid. Right.
All right, well then what I'm asking then is this. I'm asking the council to agree that all meetings will be hybrid and all agendas will be posted. And it's not it's sort of for my benefit, it's for your benefit because people.
I asked for it. I mean, Jim,
Okay,
I will say this, from the moment that I fought for the hybrid meetings, okay, after COVID, we obviously were able to run all of our meetings virtually. There was no hybrid because the only way we could conduct business was virtually. And I fought very hard and very long to turn around and require that if the Board of Education and other towns could do hybrid meetings, we should be doing that. That got us to this point. Now, might not be the absolute best. We couldn't afford the absolute best. Tom Bracken worked very hard. I was on the phone with Mr. Frankel, our former BA, when I told him, I don't care what needs to happen, what rock needs to be moved, but we need to have hybrid meetings. This isn't fair. Because we weren't out of the pandemic. There were people that wanted to still participate in council meetings, but they had to turn around and determine whether they wanted to put their life in jeopardy or their family members' lives potentially in jeopardy and their illnesses and not participate in government and taxpayer-related issues. So we did it. I'm going to tell you, my understanding when the move to any special meetings, especially the one regarding the grant in the baseball fields, I had expected it to be hybrid. I expected it to be,
as did a lot of residents.
I suspected it was going to be, I assume, and I actually think that I made comment that I wanted it hybrid. at the meeting prior to when it was discussed about going that way.
I did see some postings.
It's not okay.
Online saying, come to the meeting. I guess you knew it was not going to be hybrid. I didn't
did
know
not
that.
know it was
Maybe
not
I
gonna
should have
be
read more
hybrid.
into it or questioned, but going forward, so there's agreement that going forward, agendas will be posted and meetings will be hybrid. Good, I appreciate that.
And remember, Jim,
Mayor,
what a
did-
special meeting means. A special meeting means that it is so important.
Yeah.
It's so important that we can't wait
It's
for a regular meeting, even
special.
though I found out, ironically, after speaking with Jess, the clerk, we didn't have to have that special meeting. We could have actually conducted that business today,
Well,
but it was pushed for a special
that may be,
meeting.
but that's not, but you did have it. And just like the last discussion was potential conflicts on conflicts. And this meeting was a meeting because maybe things were done behind closed doors and to some was done behind closed doors. Okay.
May I
Now,
make,
let
may
me
I make a
get onto
comment?
that. I did listen to
Can
the
I,
tape.
can I just
I
say
did
one
listen to the
thing?
tape, and as a result of that, I asked the clerk to send me the resolution that authorized CME to prepare plans and specs
Mayor,
for the ball fields.
Mayor, may I make a comment before?
Yeah, of course.
You go off the hybrid meeting. The one thing
Before I what?
before you go off from the hybrid, I
Yeah.
think you're changing gears a little. For a hybrid meeting, I don't disagree with you. However, what I would caution is if it is a special meeting and the hybrid's already been procured for another group that uses the hybrid technology, we may have to balance those two competing
That's what life is
needs.
about,
But what's that?
balancing.
Balance, so balancing, and I think that's something, just consider it that we will do our best in,
Well, maybe you don't
achieving
schedule
this.
meetings at the same time somebody else is.
well, if
using
it's
it,
a
too.
special meeting and it needs to be done within a time frame, we may run across that.
No,
So just
apparently
keep that,
not, but-
just keep that in mind.
Sure,
Just,
I'll keep that in mind, but it's not so difficult to skip. There used to be a time when the council didn't have two meetings back to back. They met the first and third, and then the planning board met twice a month too. So I know a little bit about scheduling. It can be done if people want to do it and take their job seriously. And, speaking about those meetings, I mentioned before that last time I was here, in fact, I mentioned that a former mayor who was not O'Brien told me that he tuned in and there was rock music. And then a few days later, he called me again and said, I'm listening to another meeting. You can't hear them. And there's music again. And then I don't know what day it was. One day last week, he called me in the afternoon and he said, turn on channel, is it 15? I don't watch that normally.
Yeah, I think it's
I
different.
can
for
understand why
Verizon.
you wouldn't want to watch it. You live it. I turned on 15 and you know what? You couldn't hear anybody.
Yeah,
So
I
who-
turned it
under
on
what
as well.
department does that fall?
IT.
IT.
IT, and
It's
is that
one
part of
person.
administration and finance?
No, it's IT.
Is that a department?
Yes.
Oh, under what committee does it fall?
It's one person, we just got a second person, I think at the last meeting, we finally hired.
Okay.
Now I'm two people.
Can, I don't know what this stuff cost, but can we make sure, and no offense to music lovers, that when they tune into the council meeting, they hear the council? If somebody wants to burst into song, that would be great, that would be fine, but we don't want to hear canned music and we don't want to hear nothing, although, well, most of the time, but can we just look into that?
Denise,
I
I'll
mean,
ask.
It shouldn't be
Hold on.
that difficult.
Hold on, I'm gonna, our business administrator, I'm going to ask specifically that this has to get rectified. I got the same call, same text messages and calls saying they wanted to see what the meeting was, and they're saying, once again, music, no sound. So this is an ongoing recurring issue. I don't know if it's a here issue or if it's a TV issue, like the channel itself, whatever that entails, out of my realm of expertise. But that, it's got to get fixed. It's been going on now for months. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. Let me get back to what I was going to say. I asked the clerk for the resolution authorizing the borough engineer to draw the plans and specs for the ball fields, and half an hour later, she sent me the resolution appropriating $148,000 $500. In the same email I sent to the CFO, what did we pay? Well, for the work that was authorized not to exceed $148,500, we paid $259,175. That's a difference of about $110,000. How does that happen?
I think it came, part of it we paid and part of it came out of, we only paid the 150 or 148. The rest of it came out of the bond,
The rest of it came out of what?
the bond. You want the, either the million or the $500,000.
No, the park, thank you. The 197,000 and change came out of the park improvement ordinance, and out of the grant was 61,551.50. The reason I believe, and I'll confer to Jay to give you an explanation as to what happened, because Jay sent me a nice email stating that there were changes made, and it was conversation between Jay and Dan Frankel. So obviously it was prior to my time. But Jay, if you could further explain, if you don't, do you, or you want me to?
That's correct. The scope of work on the project changed from when we initially were authorized until we finalized the plans.
Who changed the scope of the project?
It was through Mr. Frankel.
What?
Mr. Frankel, approved by Mr. Frankel.
Well, the council does things by resolution. Now, Counselor, you can, I'm sure you're familiar with the Mario Puzo case that basically said, council doesn't authorize money, the CFO can't pay it, and the vendor doesn't get it. We can't have this, and where it came from bond ordinance, it doesn't matter where it came from. And if it came from a bond ordinance, that's even worse, because that means we're paying interest on it, on that $110,000. But if somebody, and I'm not picking on the borough engineer, but if somebody is authorized to do something for $148,000 and they submit a bill for $259,000 and there's not another resolution authorizing that additional $110,000, something's wrong. And it, you know, and I don't want to get into this grant thing. I'm not opposed to these grants. I worked in the legislature. I worked hard to help people to get grants and things. We followed a process. We didn't do what's done here. We didn't do what's done here. I remember Mr. Frankel one day said, filing the application is a formality. We already got the money. You know, if that happened when I was working in the speaker's office, somebody would have been in jail, I think. You can't do that. When I was, and I support these things. When I was chairman of the planning board, I got O'Brien Energy to improve Burks Park. You know, I was the recreation coordinator in town. I support these things, but they got to be done right. And that we're hearing that a grant that maybe we submitted, maybe we didn't submit, maybe the grant writer submitted and the council, before the council voted on it, to hear that a legislator said you're going to get it. Well, I sit on the board of a lot of nonprofits, most of which are funded by grants.
Mr. Robinson.
If any of our, this is the public portion.
Yes, I have
Most
some
of these
answers
are
for
funded
you.
By grants. If, you know, these people painstakingly make sure that every I is dotted and every T is crossed. And if they knew that some politician, well-intentioned, was saying, oh, you're going to get that money before the grant is even submitted, there'd be an investigation. That's not the way it's supposed to work. And that if we approve $148,000, and I'm not even going to comment on, well, if we approve $148,000 to design 2 baseball fields and a parking lot, and we pay $260,000, regardless of where the money comes. I mean, maybe it came from this pocket or it came from this pocket, but it came from you and you folks. So a different account or a bond ordinance, or that doesn't matter. It all came from the taxpayers of the borough of Saraville. So if it costs more, if there are changes, then folks come back, and I don't know if these were changes initiated by the recreation department, by the SAA, or by political leaders, or by, I have no idea who initiated these changes, but
What were the
they should be
changes?
done here by the council.
Well, let's figure this all out. Jay, what was your initial direction regarding plans for the Jerry S. Complex. Because remember, in order to go out for the grants, the first 1.5, there had to be specific information within the grant detailing what the design plans were in order for us to get the grant. It had to be signed off on. So if I recall, you tell me, what was the initial plans for that under what was submitted under the first set of grants?
Conceptually, what was submitted under the first set of grants were the two ball fields and the parking lot improvements.
Okay,
Our authorization was based upon a discussion of approximately $1.5 million in grants being available.
okay.
And Mayor, I've gone back to 2020. I have a timeline here. December of 2020, the Governor's Department of Directors proposed their budget. February of 21, the governors proposed the budget grant and they announced that we are included in that grant. So this goes all the way back to 2020.
Yeah, no, I'm aware of that. There were multiple grants that were coming out of,
Are you saying we were included in a grant we hadn't yet applied for?
Correct. In the governor's.
In the governor's proposed budget.
Fiscal year 2022, the governor had put in improvements to the Jerry Ust Recreation Complex for the borough of Saraville in the amount of $1 million,
Now,
which
Did the council ask for that?
it was in the governor's budget.
I understand that. You said that.
Right.
Did the council ask for that?
I was told they worked with Dan Frankel.
I'm sorry?
I was told that the legislators worked with Dan Frankel for this.
but the council would have had to have voted on submission of the
Yeah.
grant. That's what just happened at our special meeting.
So we voted on something, Councilman Enriquez announced the grant in April of 21, and we voted in
Councilman
October.
Enriquez announced.
In April of 21, he announced the grant, and then we voted October of 21 to have the plans drafted.
I'll ask our clerk, did the council vote on that?
The only resolution I have, which I gave to Jim, was the authorization for CME to prepare the plans and specs from April of 21.
And once again, we have our grant writer on the line, Miss Stephanie Gundrum, if anybody.
I don't think
Would like
this
to
is
ask her
something with the
questions.
grant, writer. This has to do with governance and what was voted on the council.
Grant writer works for the policymakers, doesn't she? He or she? I mean, the council tells the grant writer, this is what you should apply. And this is my dilemma here. I want us to get this money. I want us to get everything we can. I want us to get everything we're entitled to. I want everything to be above board and not this confusion where it's announced that we got a grant that we didn't apply for, that the council didn't ask for. The whole thing just doesn't.
I know that our grant writer works with our business administrator on a constant basis. I would like to hear from her if she's willing to explain the process to us.
What I think Mr. Robinson is communicating is that you shouldn't have to make all this effort to get this information. Ideally, you should come to the council because they are our professionals. We should, so again, and it's a buildup, right? The Zoom meetings to the television, going out of your way to get information again. And when things change through our professionals, who I'm not blaming at all in any way, when things do change that they authorize, that information should come back to those who employ them, which is us. And we should have a way in which we relay the new updates to the public, right? So it sounds as though you're saying that we're not consistently letting you know of the changes to what was initially discussed, right? And I think we need to find a better way to do that. But can we do it within are you saying that, is it possible to do it consistently, twice a month, all in the council meetings? Or are you saying that we should, do it beyond that?
I don't know the answer to that. I know this is not I've worked with grants. I worked with grants when I was in the speaker's office. I serve on nonprofit boards, a domestic violence board that's funded by a lot of state grants. I know the process. I know how it's supposed to work. I know there's not supposed to be political interference. I know that can disbar you from future grants. I know that other towns and grants are wonderful. I was talking to Danny Ryman the other day. $90 million they got, something like that, $89 million for their performing arts center. South Amboy got $5 million for economic development and some more for a ferry. All our grants, I guess we get, Michelle, you told me this at one time, we get grants for some other things that are rather
Right.
routine.
So we don't vote on those up here and all the
Um,
police grants that we're receiving. I don't, to be fair, I don't recall voting on those that we receive.
You don't vote on those grants?
No, we haven't voted on it.
No.
Jim, we get a monthly report from. On the monthly report, it's broken down into 3 categories. One, grants that are available,
Mhm.
grants that she has sent out preliminary applications for, and then grants that we actually receive. We get that monthly.
Mhm.
And I'm gonna,
And who decides, Mary, what grants to apply for?
The grant writer applies for as many as she thinks that we are willing
The
to.
grant writer apply. The
Yes.
grant writer doesn't come to the council for authorization.
No, she works with in her monthly report,
But
she
you
puts
pass a
notes to
resolution
who she speaks
authorizing
to,
the submission of a grant,
directors of departments.
Right?
what I understand is, like, we just got a grant. We really weren't, we're told that we were granted this $175,000 and we will do a resolution to accept the grant. But until we actually are told that we have it, we don't do a resolution to apply.
I think
So-
certain grants, though, I will say, like Mike had just reminded me of the grant to get vests for police officers, non-matching. Those don't come with a cost of $1 million, $10 million worth of engineering costs. They don't come at a cost of taxpayers paying out of pocket or for major plans and changes to be made to specific areas in the town or property. This is this project is different.
Yeah, I
Because
agree.
this
And-
project requires more comment and more discussion.
More scrutiny
I
and more
still-
discussion by the governing body, and especially since some of these grants, and I was there the other day, the field is beautiful. I was very happy to get that county grant. And we talked about that and we advertised it. We used it in political campaigns and things like that. It was a matching grant, but we bonded for our portion of it. So when we say, let's take this, when we talked in February, it was a $5 million project. Now it's apparently a $6.2 million project. If we get 2.5 million with engineering, if we get 2.5 million, we're going to probably bond for the difference. So
Would we,
that's not a $3 million project. So that, and I'm not saying that's bad. I'm not saying that's bad. I'm saying it ought to be done publicly in the sunlight so everybody knows exactly what we're talking about. Everybody knows exactly what the bottom line is, and everybody can make comments.
I sat up here many, many times and said that things were getting done by the business administrator. We should have this lengthy report from the business administrator, and we weren't getting them, and I bitched all the time.
Mary, I agree with you. You know, there used to be a time when the council had an agenda session on Mondays and they worked and they talked about these things and they discussed these things, and then they had the regular session on Wednesday. And that was changed. And that's one of the reasons that the COA thing was so screwed up, because you weren't able to discuss it. You didn't get into the nuances of it, and you didn't know all that. And I don't want to take any more time, and I don't want anybody to think I'm opposed to these grants. I love grants. Who doesn't like free money? If it's done right, if there are no conflicts involved. If people who have conflicts don't vote on the things and stay out of it, that's what it should be. But there was one other thing, when I listened to the tape. Is there another grant from the county for the Cerebral Little League that folks in the audience mentioned it? Does anybody up here know about it?
Yes. So again, in my timeline, and I'm sure you can figure this out. Our plans were drafted in October of 21. The bus depot was January of 22 announced.
Wait, just go, I'm taking notes. So I want to know what you're talking about. Go back to the first thing.
Sure. So we talked about the grants. So state grants were applied
the Little
for.
League.
No, state grants were applied for at the Jerry S. Complex, right?
Yeah.
Then we heard that the bus depot was being announced and that AA was losing their fields at Salover
There is a connection
in
there
place.
and a common denominator.
So once the AA fields were saved, county grants were requested to upgrade the fields where AA would stay where they were. And
County grants were requested
county grants
By whom?
were,
by whom?
our rec director worked with this grant.
The Recreation director requested.
Denise
grant
was the
from the
recreation director.
Wait, but, quick question. I wanted to confirm. It sounds as though there are grants that can be pursued that is not necessarily the borough, but maybe other committees under the borough. Like maybe the police can pursue a grant, but it's not necessarily the borough of Sayreville pursuing it. Maybe different groups under our borough, you know?
Would the
It-
council
but it may not
know
necessar-
about that grant, Councilman?
But I'm saying that the ones that we vote on, I believe, are grants in the name of the borough, right? While there's other grants that might be other, from other groups.
The rec director, though, is
That's what it sounds like.
borough. Do we know why the rec director was looking for a grant specifically for the Sayreville AA and what was it for?
So that is when both leagues, we approved in October. When did we approve? We approved $5,000 to have CME conduct new plans for the additional grants.
I didn't know that, I thought that 5,000 was for the initial grant. Wait a minute. Is there other projects now going on with upgrades to other? Jay, what is going on here? Oh, how many projects on ball fields do we have? I
All
was
this money
shocked when
coming
the
in, all
Sayreville
this
Little
money
League
coming in.
president, Mr.
So
Corby, came up to the microphone and then somebody, Eric Kutz or something, came up and said that I guess they had some kind of conversation with Tom Polando and Jay. And they actually said at the microphone, we don't need the improvements over at the Jerry S. Field.
and one cannot be confused with the other. We cannot move money from the Jerry S. complex once we receive it. I think it's now a perfect location. It's on neutral ground.
I understand that if you have a grant, the grants are very.
They're very
Very
I know that
specific.
very,
It
very
cannot
well.
be moved. So, and you can
But-
also not assume that we will receive the county grants. It's
the
one
county
specific
grant is
grant
for
at a
how much?
time. I'm not sure about those grants.
Vince, you're the Sayreville AA president.
Yeah,
Let's,
so what I had heard about was, it's on, I got it covered. What I had heard from actually Bob at the Little League, he told me that a couple of months ago, he had gotten together with Tom and
a
said,
couple months ago, what, like,
Yeah. I don't know. I wasn't there at the meeting. Bob told me
A
it
couple months
was,
ago would be August.
it was hearsay. You can check with Bob on the date. I wasn't at the meeting. That him and Tom got together, I believe with CME, to talk about improvements to the Little League fields and the AA fields.
timeout.
What?
Tom Polando and Bob Corby met with CME?
I-
Jay, did you meet with Tom
Go ahead,
and?
'cause
Yeah.
What I hear is just hearsay. I wasn't at the meeting.
That's why I
heard,
figured I'll go
so-
to Jay.
Mr. Frankel asked our office to meet with Sayreville AA and Sayreville Little League to talk about conceptual plans for projects for upgrading in their fields to apply to the county to see if they would provide money to fund those improvements. That project was discussed before the mayor and council. Our office was authorized to prepare conceptual plans. We prepared those plans. We provided them to Little League and Sayreville AA. They approved the plans. We prepared cost estimates. July 25th, Mr. Frankel sent a letter to the county requesting grant monies be considered for those two projects.
How much did this conversation and stuff cost us? How much did these plans cost? That this, and the council approved this? I was under the impression, I did not realize, because I wasn't a part of Tom, Bob, and your meeting. Did anybody else on the council know that there was additional conversations going on about more upgrades to both now the Little League and the AA?
We were all sent a copy of the plans.
No, that's not what I asked. Did we have did this, who here knew that now we're looking at two separate projects?
It was discussed at the council. The council authorized, before we prepared plans, we were authorized by the council to prepare those plans for those projects.
Okay, maybe I misunderstood them, which is possible. So there's now two projects and this council authorized,
The Cerevel AA and the Cerevel Little League project were not detailed plans and specifications. They were conceptual plans based upon a wish list of improvements from both organizations. We prepared conceptual plans showing what they had requested be done. We prepared cost estimates for those recommended improvements. We provided that information to Mr. Frankel. Mr. Frankel sent a letter to Middlesex County, to the director, requesting that the borough's projects be considered for funding by the county.
how much were those projects?
The
Estimate.
preliminary estimates was approximately 2.7 for each, $2.7 million for each project.
2.7, and that was for what?
Improvements to the Cerevel AA complex and improvements to the Cerevel Little League complex.
But do we know what those specific improvements were?
I have a cost estimate, Mayor, if you'd like, I can. It was upgrading lighting, upgrading field improvements, putting turf fields in, upgrading buildings, upgrading backstops, upgrading fencing, upgrading the lighting. And one site had building improvements as well. So it was basically redoing the existing fields, upgrading the lights because there's safety conditions with the existing lighting. And there are also some building related improvements.
And and for both fields, each one is approximately $2.6 million each, or is that combined?
0.7 each.
2.7 each.
Now, I'll tell you.
So we
I'll tell you why
have,
I'm a little.
we have one, wait, I gotta get this straight,
I understand
Jim.
why everybody's confused.
I have to get this straight. So we have right now a $5.4 million project to do upgrades to Cerevel Little League and Cerevel AA individually. And the project over at the Jerry Us complex is estimated at just over $6 million if we include engineering costs. Correct.
But those plans can be amended should we wish.
Okay, now let me ask, now, from what I understand in the documents that I have to sign off on and certify as mayor, it specifically says that those grants for the Jerry S. complex cannot just simply be amended and then changed, because you have to certify that the upgrades are necessary and needed and would be a benefit to the community. I know because I had to read that and sign that document with the last $500,000 grant. And I had a major concern with it and brought in Mr. Frankel and brought in, I'm trying to think if I brought in you, Mike, or whatnot, because I was uncomfortable with the schedule of the way this went down also, because the grant was already submitted. And then after the fact, I was asked to certify that the project was necessary.
Can we ask our grant writer who's on the phone to confirm that?
I'm confirming it for you. That's what I had to sign. It happened already.
So it's
I had to
true.
call
So
my
you're
attorney.
saying, so the grant writer, can we also get the grant writer's confirmation? Can you call to have the grant writer
Sure, if she
confirm
wants to.
that the plans cannot be changed?
Well, no, I had to sign off on a document saying that this had to be done under these things.
Can we, like, let's say we've got a 5 million, because I know when,
Can't hear you.
I know back when this was first started, we had huge plans for the whole thing and we did it as we had money. Can we, let's say, take this $2.5 million and do one field now? And if we get more money, do the other field. And if we get more money, do the parking lot.
Yes, you're phasing the
We're
improvements that were
phasing it in,
designed,
so
so
we
it can be done
can
that way.
change it. We
Stephanie?
phase it in. That's
Hello.
the way we've
You're
done
not
things like that. all the
changing it,
time.
you're building it in
Right.
phases.
We're building it in phases. Thank you. I mean, that's the way we've done most of the projects that I
Stephanie?
know of going back to the 90s.
I have a very simple
let-
question for Jay. I'm a little confused here, and I'm sorry, sorry I brought this up. And I just want to reiterate, I'm in favor of these things. I want us to get every dime we're entitled to. Are we talking about close to $11 million in ball fields, or 5.4 or $6.2 million in ball fields?
Depends on which projects you're referring to. The improvements at Jerry S. Complex construction cost was approximately 5. The estimates for Little League and for Sarah A were 5.4. So 10.4 construction costs for.
Exclusive of
Wait,
engineering. So
non-engineer-
we're talking
wait,
$11 million.
Hold on. So the $5.4 million between the Little League and the AA, that is not inclusive of engineering costs as well, right? That's just construction.
But Jay, that's also what you said before. That's a wish list. There's nothing that they're targeting. I think in Dan sending that to the county, I think he was essentially trying to throw something out there and to see if there was a possibility. I don't know that there's
But if you
anything
apply
that's
for a
coming,
grant, you got to have a
Well,
plan.
but I don't know.
It's not a specific grant.
Yeah.
There is a request made to the county. The
Which one
county,
isn't a specific grant?
the Little League and the AA projects. They were requested to the county. The county provided assistance on other borough projects in the past. That was the same type of request that Mr. Frankel was submitting for these projects.
Do we know what line items from the county or the state they were looking to pull that money from? Because it's my understanding that every budgetary line item from the state
I do have that,
is
Mayor.
based on the previous year's budget.
We
So-
are on NJ.gov, page 137. The PDF is titled FY22GBM. That's
And
for
what
the
does it
state.
say?
That's
And
for
what's
the
that for?
state. That's for the state grant.
That, which would cover what? We have 2 projects now. Is this the Jerry Us project?
That is the Jerry S. project.
And
Stephanie, can you please confirm?
Wait, before I bring her into the meeting, you have to, let's turn around and get the information that you're giving. So under the New Jersey State Gov page,
Mhm.
everybody in
It has
the
been
audience.
public knowledge it's been on their website apparently since we were on the line item in 2020.
2020, well, wait a minute, that was for the initial $1 million grant. That was for the initial $1 million grant. I'm not talking about the initial $1 million grant. That's already been.
So this is where I've been directed to
Hold
go.
on.
So Denise, I actually requested and was advised not to have legislators here today to give a presentation or to answer any questions in case it didn't come up. It came up. I think it's warranted. I think we should officially invite them to be part of the agenda next meeting so that they can give their professional opinion on how this process was done. Denise? But
Somebody ought
tonight
to
we
give an
do
opinion
have
on how
Stephanie.
processes are- I mean,
Sure.
I remember like it was yesterday when Dan Frankel said to me, filing the grant application is only a formality. We already got the money. Remember that? When you hear somebody say something like that, it's kind of unforgettable. Denise, I should know this. What's the current budget? I'm sure you know.
Ballpark, maybe 67 mil?
I thought it was 66 million.
Yeah, I think
So
it's
just to
right around
put
there,
things in
Jim.
perspective, we're talking about $11 million for ball fields. And the total budget, which includes all the police, the public works, the library, is 60, I thought it was 66 million, but you're the treasurer, I'll defer to you, 67 million, 11 for ball fields. Now, I love this money. This is great, but we got to prioritize. And if the grant writer is on the phone, which I hope she is, roads, infrastructure, library, community center. I bet if you put something on several social media and you said, if we had $11 million to spend, what are our priorities? I think if you said, we got some money to spend, what are the priorities? I don't think folks would say, let's spend 11 million on ball fields when the roads are like they are, when the library could be updated, when we don't have a community center. Michelle, you were working on a community center. Mayor, you were, as I appreciate that. That's gone nowhere, unfortunately, but
We, Jim, we
It's-
do
it's-
get grants for roads. What do we get for, $1 million just for Pulaski Avenue, Jay?
Over $1 million for.
Yeah.
Pulaski.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
Ernst
we get grants every single year for
I
roads.
I understand that. I
Choose what
understand we
to
get
use
some.
grants for.
Jay, Ernstson was a grant too, I believe.
Did we get $11 million for roads?
Well, we didn't get $11 million here either. We
No,
may
not
get
yet.
nothing from the council.
So let me
Or-
go
or
back.
in
Nothing.
expenditures.
Let me
Okay,
ask-
I think you
Yes.
get my point. I don't want to belabor
Yeah.
this, but
Let me ask Councilwoman Mar something. Okay, so the 2020 that you're referencing is the previous $1 million. That was the initial $1
I
million.
cannot confirm how much that is for. I would love to listen to our professional grant writer who is on the phone tonight
We're
to
going-
answer
we're
any
going to-
questions.
We're definitely going to call on her. I see her right there. But you said you had done all of this research, so I want to give you an opportunity to
Correct.
speak on it. So the $1
have.
million from 2020, and Denise, I'll ask you that, the 2020 grant was the initial grant.
There were two grants. Fiscal year 2022 was $1 million. It was in the governor's budget, which he proposed on February 23rd, 2021. Okay?
I remember that.
Fiscal
During
year-
that discussion, Mr. Palando told us we were getting the additional million.
Fiscal
And
year,
that's when I asked Jay the cost of the total project, and he said 5 million, and I still remember the look on
Yep.
everybody's face.
So that was,
that was
this
the
is,
first million,
2022 was the first million?
correct. In the fiscal year 2022, but it was announced in 2021, because don't forget, the state is on a fiscal year,
Oh.
not a calendar year.
Okay,
So
so
the
the
state-
And none of
budget
this
runs
includes
July
that
1st.
500,000 for Bailey Park, because we didn't get
That's
that, right?
gone. That's off the
gone.
table.
that's gone.
Now fiscal year 2023 comes along, okay? And the governor proposed another $1 million for the Jerry S. Complex with his budget on March 8th,
How
2022.
did the governor know
fiscal
about the Jerry Ust complex?
Listen, I don't know. I only researched it. And I can show you on what
Somebody must
pages
have
and
told her.
everything.
I would think.
I-
So we have, so now, let me see if I got this right. So 2022, and don't mind, I put
That's
1,000,
okay.
it's a
No,
million.
It's fine.
A million in February. That's the one that we were enlightened up here as a council. That was when Mr. Plando came up and told us, you're getting $1 million. It was a shock to all of us.
Right,
So that was that first million.
right.
And now the 2023 is the one that we're talking about that just recently got submitted on the 14th, because you signed it the 13th
Correct.
and it went in on the 14th.
And then in between those two, am I on? Yes. Okay, we also received a community and cultural grant, which is 500,000. And that references the Jerry Ust complex also. Half of that money has
Community and
already,
cultural went to Jerry Ust complex,
that came from, it's a different,
add to all the other.
it's a different,
Because there's some community and cultural things that.
Is
could be
that the
funded
money
in
that was
town.
reallocated from
Everybody,
Bailey
everybody
Park?
in Sayreville doesn't play softball and
I
baseball.
don't know that. I have no idea. I don't
So,
think but
because we're still trying to figure out what happened to the Bailey Park money
that I don't know.
that, and it was my understanding that $500,000 from the Bailey Park that we didn't receive. And I had discussions with Jay and CME regarding that because we knew as a council that $500,000 wasn't going to get a substantial upgrade to the park. It was really a front end facelift in essence. That park needs a lot more than $500,000. And then, so that grant went away. And then this community and cultural grant came up and this went to the Jerry Ust.
And that was for the same
Okay.
thing.
It sounds like the Jerry Ust complex had a good godfather. And I don't deny them that. I don't,
But
that's
now I
fine.
have
But
the
we have
Sayreville-
Other things in town that money should be spent on. Maybe they don't have.
Well, to be fair,
the
Mr.
same powerful
Robinson,
Advocates.
to
What's
be
that?
fair, our children have a wonderful turf soccer field, a wonderful turf football field. But you know why there's not a turf baseball field in town? Politics. And that needs to change.
So anyway, moving on, I think I finally see something. We have two projects here before the borough. Taxpayers now, I think we can see interesting things. You have $2.5 million potentially that seem to be 100% earmarked already, done in a very wacky and wild submission, application, approval process that depending on what day of the week it is and who you are, you find out about these things before anybody on the governing body. I would really like to understand this process by the elected officials that control that money. I would love to have that. So if they can come, by all means, I have a million questions. So we have the Jerry Us Complex project. That's somewhere around $6 million, give or take, inclusive of construction and engineering costs, which the Saraville Little League and the Saraville AA representatives, and maybe Vince Conti, you can tell me if you concur with your player development guy, Eric, that came up, both said they don't even think we need that complex.
So I have a
Well,
letter.
Wait, that was a question to Vince.
Our leagues would prefer to stay where we are, and the expansion of Jerry Us would be used by everyone else in town, the schools, et cetera. They don't have that kind of nice quality field to play on. And that's what they would use it for. That's what they should use it for.
I have a letter from our rec director. He wasn't able to make the meeting last week and he had a prior commitment, but he did write in. I didn't want to muddy the waters with, it was purely, last meeting was purely about passing the resolution to accept the money. And then once we decide what to do with that money, I think that's a whole separate meeting.
Accept or to apply?
That was to accept the resolution.
To apply.
That was to apply, not to accept.
So the email that
Exactly,
he
Jim,
sent.
to submit.
Big difference.
So if I can read this email into submission on record, this is from our rec director. The Recreation Department receives numerous requests each spring and summer from organizations looking to rent baseball or softball fields. As most of our current fields are permitted out to Saraville Little League and the AA, we are unable to accommodate these requests, which removes a potential revenue source for the borough. So he believes that this field, again, on neutral territory, would be beneficial for all. The schools, it could be a game field for both our leagues.
This is just.
And I would like to hear again from our grant writer if the plans can be amended or not.
Well, hold on. I don't even think we're there yet. I know you want to keep pushing the grant writer, but we're
Why
not
do we
even there
not
yet.
want to hear the professional
Because right
opinion
now
of
it
the
has
grant
nothing to
writer?
do
That's
with her.
concerning that no one up here wants to ask her any questions.
No.
That's really concerning.
It's
to
not
me.
concerning. Michelle, you want to keep deferring to her, but right now I'm trying to figure out as a taxpayer, how many projects we have going to softball fields, because I'm enlightened as to what kind of cost, money, and all of this is happening here. I don't think half of us knew, maybe some of us knew, what was going on as far as the number of projects on baseball fields.
Well, you
That's
knew
not
about
something that-
about the Jerry Us complex because you and Vince had a special meeting without anybody in 310.
No, Councilwoman Mar, I don't think you understand what happened at that meeting. There was no meeting, not with me. Maybe you didn't listen. I left.
Are you going to
this-
say it slower for me?
I can if you wish. Okay, I will. I left this council meeting after a council meeting, walking out the door to leave to go to my home. I happened to look to the right. Hey, Vince, were you not seated with Jay or standing with Jay?
No,
Was
I'm
I
gonna-
involved in that meeting?
I'm going to clarify because I wasn't involved in it either. I got to the table and saw this elaborate plan all written up. I had nothing to do with anything that was on those papers.
No,
I was
that's
there
not what I'm asking.
I was there to review the papers now that I heard there were papers. So we started talking about it.
How did you know Jay was bringing papers in? Because
I
you
don't
were
recall.
in there.
I don't recall, but
Oh.
papers were drawn up. I don't know.
I'll
I don't
ask
know who
Jay.
initiated them.
Jay, on that day, did you just bring in papers and decide to lay them out on the table, or were you there to discuss those papers with somebody?
I advised Councilman Conti. He had contacted me prior to that meeting to talk about the project. I explained to him that the project at that time included the construction of 2 softball fields. He was concerned with having 2 softball fields. He was not sure that there was a need for 2 softball fields. He asked to see the plans. So I brought the plans at that council meeting on the 27th and sat with him and showed him the plans. And that, Mayor, is when you walked by and you had your discussion about the project.
So thank you for clarifying that, Jay. Councilwoman Marr, you now heard Vince Conti had a conversation with Jay. And Jay brought those plans in to speak directly with Councilman Conti. That was not a meeting. I was not involved in it. And as Jay just said, I walked by. Jay, how would you categorize or describe when I walked in and asked, hey, guys, what's going on here? Did I know that that meeting was transpiring? Did I know you were talking to him? Or was I angry and upset after he told me, after Vince Conti said, I don't care about girls, I only care about baseball? Is that correct in part of the conversation?
Oh, that's also a misquote. Don't try and quote me, Mayor.
No, I'm asking
Can't-
Jay.
But you just quoted me, and that's,
I didn't put
and
quotes
take that
around.
back, please, because that is a misstatement.
Oh,
right?
okay. I'll read your apology letter
You
again.
could
but
read
go
that. It
ahead.
doesn't say anything about not caring about girls. So please
Mr.
retract that
Cornell,
because it's false.
Mr. Cornell, can you please discuss why I had, or what Mr. Conti was looking for?
Mayor, your discussion with Councilman Conti had to do with the type of fields. You were of the opinion that they should be softball fields, and he felt.
Universal fields.
So hang on. So now, Jay, earlier
Universal.
in this conversation, you said there were 2 softball fields. Who indicated to you to draw up plans for 2 softball fields? I know it wasn't me
Discussion with Mr. Frankel and the mayor.
and the mayor. Okay,
Not with Mr. Palando either. No conversations with Mr. Palando. And for the record,
just making sure it
No,
was
no.
with the mayor as well.
Mr. Cornell, was it, I'm going to,
Okay.
excuse me.
That was
Excuse
prior
me.
to anything I had to do with.
Are you saying, Jay, that I was not advocating for universal fields that would enable boys and girls to play? Are you going to put that on the record saying that?
They were set up as softball fields. The turf is designed as softball fields, similar to the Heavenly Farms project in East Brunswick, which you referenced. And they had the ability to be utilized for baseball with portable mounds and.
Exactly.
Wait.
They
So
were
There
universal
sounds like there was a
fields.
lot to do with you prior to any of us. You
No.
referenced Heavenly Farms or something project?
Oh, it's a complex in East Brunswick, yeah.
So can you clear the record as far as
Oh,
when
I'll
you
clear
got
the record.
involved in this conversation? Because that was the first that I saw plans. I had heard about them and I said, let me take a look.
Well, wait a
That was
minute.
the
Jay
first
just
time.
said that there were plans presented to the council for that. How did the
I never
grant
saw
get
I
submitted?
never saw the blueprints. And that's
Yeah.
what he showed me that
I never
day.
saw the blueprints either. Good. And
Okay, so
that was
that's
the first time that
saw
I
it.
had saw physical blueprints was when I walked past that
But it
room.
was
Mr.
also the first
Conti.
conversation I had where you had conversations saying, give me 2 softball fields.
No,
How
no,
did
no,
Vince get
nice
involved,
try.
though? Wait, if
Jay
if-
said
if
so.
the mayor had a conversation with the engineering professional, right?
Yeah.
My question for Mr. Conti is, how did you know about it to now ask Jay to take a look?
Thank you.
Because I will say I'm part of AA. And so AA understood that we were building fields down there.
So he
And-
understood a conversation between the mayor and her professional, right? And this is where the issue comes in, right? Where a politician who's connected to a nonprofit comes in between what government is trying to do for its residents, right?
And this was after Tom Polino got up at the microphone and told the entire council that we were getting money.
So this is why they're no longer interested in the Jerry S. complex.
My 5 minutes are almost up.
Yeah,
So,
actually, Jimmy,
so
I think they were up a long time
I would
ago.
just-
But for the record, Jay, I want to say thank you because you 100% proved exactly what I've been saying from the start. And I want to thank Mr. Conti for acknowledging the fact that as a Saraville Athletic Association Executive Board member, he was coming in and he was having discussions. For him to say that he did not know that those fields were being discussed when his president at the time stood up here and enlightened the entire council of it. I had never seen physical plans until back there. And what you were advocating for was not to make them And you even admitted that they were Sayreville AA fields in the text message you sent me, because I was advocating the whole time for it to be community fields. And you put in the text message, you apologized for that
So you were involved much earlier than I was.
because it was discussed here and
No, no,
that's
no,
my
no.
job.
And you were trying to get them to be softball fields.
I was trying to get them to be universal
Jay
fields
just said, you said softball field.
because they can be used as
No,
universal
not
fields.
because
Yeah.
softball fields. That's what you said.
Listen, Vince.
So I came in there and said, whoa, wait a second.
Since
If we're
this is
gonna
the
play
public
there.
portion, and
Jay?
I don't want to go over my 5 minutes.
Now we're going to.
Let me just say 3 things in closing. This discussion, this confusion among our elected officials is
Oh,
illustrative
it is.
of the problem. Decisions are being made by folks who we didn't elect. And that's why, no pun intended, we don't know who's on first. And we don't know if we're talking about 5.4 million or 6.2 million or 11 million. And that ain't a good thing, ladies and gentlemen. And that's because, and I said this before a couple months ago, politics, unelected officials have too much say. Their job is not to be involved in the government. Their job is to run campaigns fairly and hope they elect their candidates. And this has got to stop. And the professionals have to stop allowing it, condoning it, enabling it.
Excuse
Or we
me.
should change the professionals.
As Jay pointed out,
And
this council
this is-
voted on those resolutions to authorize CME to do it. We voted on it.
not all
We
of that,
told
Mary, not all of that. And
We authorized them to draw
no,
up the
and
plans.
that's not my point. I'm not talking about.
What's
just
your
the
point- what's your
expenditure.
point is, Mr.
I'm
Robinson,
talking about
wait.
meetings that professionals allow
Oh, one moment.
political
What-
leaders in. For God's sakes, we had 2 professional folks having a meeting with CME to talk about the benefits of pilots. Well, I'll say this, pilots are a benefit to some people.
Right, but-
Pilots are a benefit to some people. They're not necessarily a benefit to the taxpayers in town. And we had the former Democratic chairman and the current Republican chairman. We're going to have a forum on pilots, for God's sakes. Their job is to run elections, not to get involved in the running of government. And that's why we have these problems. And that's why you folks sat here not knowing or looking like you didn't know exactly what was going on. That's my first point. The other point is this. I'm all for these grants. I'm all for these improvements. Kids certainly need those things. It's good for them mentally and physically and spiritually to develop like that. $11 million is an awful lot of money. But we have other needs. We have other needs in the borough of Sayreville. And when we're talking about $11 million for baseball fields, that doesn't really help the kid who might be artistically inclined or musically inclined or theatrically inclined. And when I hear that money came with cultural and community events, and it too is going to more softball fields to pilot more so that we get closer to that $11 million, that's a disservice. That's a disservice to other kids in town. And there's a point where we say, you know, we got to prioritize. We're the adults in the room. We have to make decisions. We have to prioritize them. Maybe we've spent enough on that. Maybe we have to spend some money on some other things. And thirdly, and you're all my friends, I like every single one of you. I respect you. But you know what? The appearance of conflict, and perhaps actual conflict, but certainly the appearance of conflict is inescapable. And I ain't a Boy Scout. I've been around. I've been in politics. I've been in government. I worked at the highest level of state government. I know politics. But the ordinary folks, they hear about this stuff and they shake their heads. And that's why they don't want to get involved. That's why they question things. That's why if you do innocent things, but you do them behind closed doors, you lose the benefit of the doubt and people automatically say there's something sinister going on. And that's not their fault for thinking that. You allow that. You foster that. And that's got to stop. And I apologize for taking more than 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. I do have one question, since my integrity was called on the record. Vince, this is a direct quote from you. I was told they were going to be Saraville AA fields.
I said.
And excuse me, I'm not
I
done.
didn't deny that.
I'm not done. Who told you they were going to be Saraville AA fields?
Mr. Palando.
Okay. And then you wrote also to me, had I knew that these were going to be town fields, I would have minded my business unless someone asked for my opinion.
I would have backed up and just took a seat on the council and made decisions as a councilman.
And that was what my conversation was and why I left that meeting with you and Jay that I stumbled upon in the manner that I did. I was angry and I was upset. They're using the word softball fields really to make it look like I was trying to secure something for my own family, when in fact, the word softball field, and Jay, you know exactly why I was fighting so hard for that, because with the dimensions of certain size softball fields, they could be utilized with a portable mound for baseball and softball. My terminology was repeatedly universal fields because it would service both boys and girls of the community. And I use that term repeatedly.
That project.
But I have used it for many. Thank you, Councilman Anoha. But I appreciate that. I still appreciate the apology that you sent me, Mr. Conti. And that's all that I have to say. We have an interesting way to move forward here, people. I would like to see for the first time ever a formal presentation to the entire public of both of these projects, which is something that I don't think all of us in a room, including the public, has seen. Because there's going to have to be major decisions made outside of a grant, which again, for the record, I'm not opposed to grants. I'm not opposed to free money, but I'm opposed to it being put together in a way that doesn't look above board. And that's where we are. So what I would like, and hopefully council will support this, we have a phenomenal engineer, Jay, at the next meeting, can you do a formal presentation of both projects? The project for the Jerry Us complex and the projects that was discussed with Tom Polando and Mr. Corby regarding the improvements to both the Saraville AA and the Saraville Little League, inclusive of pricing, design, construction, and engineering costs, because that's what this council has to decide on. Regardless of the grants that we get, none of them right now can cover the cost of any of these projects. So we're going to have to figure out, you guys are going to have to figure out what you're willing to spend, what increases you have to make, what bonding you have to do. But I don't think anybody, we shouldn't continue down this path. No one even knows what, like you said, who's on first or what's on second. Kids deserve absolutely as much as we can afford to give. Afford to give. Okay? Afford to give. And if you want to go above what we can afford to give, then you got to put it all out. And we got to hear all sides.
Can you please
That's what we're
hear
elected
from our
to do.
grant writer who's on the phone?
I don't know if we need to hear from her anymore, but
I would like to hear from our professionals.
go ahead, ask your questions to the grant writer. Stephanie, you are in the public session. Please state your name and your professional capacity in which you will be speaking this evening.
Hello, my name is Stephanie Gunderman, and I am the Borough
I
of
can't
Saraville.
hear you. Hold on, let us turn up the mic one more time. Go ahead, Stephanie, one more time.
Is this better?
Yes, much better. It was on. our
Okay.
end.
I am Stephanie Gunderman. I am the Borough of Saraville's contact from Bruno Associates and grant writer.
Stephanie, I think that Councilwoman Mar had questions for you.
Oh, no. I think I've asked enough questions. I would love to know that everyone else on this council cares enough to reach out and ask for research from our professional. Stephanie, can you please explain the grant writing process, how you apply for grants, who you work with? Can you please explain to the council your everyday procedures?
Yes. So firstly, we will do research based on assessed needs that have been told to us through either council members or usually the borough administrator. Then we will send out grant alerts to either department heads, including the borough administrator, and then we will get consent from the borough administrator to submit. We will never submit grant applications without confirmation. So I just wanted to make that clear. Then also, if a grant requires a resolution, we draft a resolution and we send it to be certified. Occasionally, grants deadlines do not match up with mayor and council meetings. If that is the case and the grant application allows for it, we are allowed to submit a draft with it, a draft of a resolution, and submit the resolution that's certified on a later date. If the resolution does not get passed, then that application is void and does not affect the borough of Sayreville in any way.
Hey, Stephanie, can I ask you a question? How often does it occur with grants from the state, county, or other government agencies where the grant monies actually gets listed under the fiscal budget for that particular government agency before you submit? How often does that happen?
That
Where the
usually,
actual award is given before even a submittal?
that usually happens when either through like an appropriations grant. So you submit through either Congress or state officials, and they put it within the budget, and that's usually how it is put into the budget. And so it's a preset budget amount, and then it is funneled into these grants, specifically like the Jerry Us grant that is specifically for that project for that specific municipality. I can't speak on how often that happens, as every borough and town will reach out for separate reasons and separate frequencies. But it will happen in those situations. Otherwise, it is open solicitations for specified eligible applications.
So and just for clarification, in reference to the Jerry Us, now it's my understanding there's 3 Jerry Us grants that were awarded. I'm going to say the word awarded because according to Ms. Marr, she was already been given knowledge, information, and Denise Biancamano, our CFO, has stated already that these grants are already appropriated in the state budgets. My question to you is, well, let me see how to phrase this question for you. Your job is to submit those. Do you know how that money gets allocated? Or how is it without a grant submission? Who earmarks that money and how do you get notified that it's in there? So who earmarks right now? You only submitted or got approval to submit the grant, this latest grant. It was submitted on the 14th, but we had the meeting afterwards and to authorize it. But you knew that that money was already in there and appropriated for us. Is that correct?
I was aware that there was some funds set aside. How it became appropriated for this project, I am unaware of. But the grants are brought to our attention through the NJDCA, the New Jersey Department of Community Affairs, which is where the application is submitted through, and they notify us and the borough about, well, firstly, they notify the borough, and the borough says, this is our grant writer, and puts us in contact with us. And through that 3-way communication, we were made aware of these grants.
So somewhere along the lines, it's a higher up elected official that has responsibility over certain areas of the state budget that earmarked that cash for the Jerry Us fields, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and then you get notified that that money's been earmarked, and then you have to then fill out your grant submission?
Correct.
Okay. Next question I have for you. With the grants, there are usually specs that have to be, or identification of project. They usually have to be very specific. Is that true? Did that happen here with the Jerry Ust grants?
Yes.
And I do recall under at least one grant, and I don't remember if it was you, Stephanie, that I dealt with, that there was a timeline issue again. And as the mayor, I needed to authorize that. In fact, I felt that those improvements needed to be, were necessary and would be a benefit to the community. Are you aware of those types of certifications?
Can you be more specific? I'm sorry, I'm not
So
understanding the
basically, like a
question.
second phase, in order to accept the grant, the mayor, I was told that I needed to sign off on a document. And that
Yes.
no other elected official was able to sign off on that document, authorizing that this grant would be a benefit to community, and that I felt that all of the projects listed under those grants were in fact worthy and required and necessary. Are you aware of those documents?
There are specific documents that I'm not familiar, I'm not off the top of my head, I do not know the exact language. There are two forms that I think you may be referring to. There are specific pages that go that need to be signed prior to submission of the application. But there is also the signing off on the award, which I'm unsure which one you're referring to, but I can pull up the signature pages right now to double check the wording if you would like me to.
No, well, I mean, you can, you absolutely can. I know what they were, but yeah, there's at least two documents to do that. Now, just for the record, again, you don't know how that money gets appropriated. It comes through the government agencies and elected officials that appropriate that cash in their budget. You're kind of in after the fact, correct? Once you're notified that the money's there, right?
In this situation, yes.
Okay. So you can't speak to who spoke to the elected official to get the money in the line item, who discussed the project, who turned around and pushed in order to get that money into the state line item. Is that correct?
Correct. I am not able to speak on that.
Very good. Okay, thank you. If you would take a few moments and then just look at the certifying documents that come along with that, maybe you can find the name of the one that I had to certify as the mayor. I was told that I'm the only individual that is able to sign off on that. I'll give you a few minutes or as much time as you need. And I do believe you're right. I think there's only two documents.
So the two documents that that are submitted with the initial application do not have that exact wording that I'm seeing. They are saying that they are just true, that they are certified to the best of their knowledge, the belief that all data supplied is true and correct.
Yeah, that I think is for the submission. This
Okay.
particular one that I had to sign off on was for acceptance of the grant.
Oh, okay. So that
Yeah.
is, I am unaware of those forms. Those forms I believe are usually sent directly to the borough. There are occasionally, depending on the portal, and I believe the portal used for the Jerry Oos application uses an electronic signature to certify that the grant is accepted. And yes,
You're correct, Steph.
yes,
You're correct.
that as the mayor, your account is the only account allowed to acknowledge the acceptance of the award.
Yes, that's the one that I was referencing, Steph. I'm sorry. I should
Okay.
have been more clear. It was the grant acceptance from the application process. Even the council can authorize that. I think, first of all, Steph, let me just say, at no time I think you're doing a phenomenal job, and I'm so grateful that we have a grant writer. And I'm grateful for the grants that you can and you have already obtained for us. Let me make that clear. You've done a great job with this. Please do not think that anything that I'm questioning and the reason why I am apprehensive is really with that last document that you clearly don't have anything to do with, nor do you see. But one of the reasons why I am apprehensive is actually something that you acknowledged to this council and to the residents. You are responsible for submitting of the grants when you realize that money's been appropriated. In this case, these are state agencies that are earmarking dollars. My concern is nothing to do with what you do at all. My concern is how that money got put there into the state budget and who actually may have lobbied for it. That's where my concern is. But and please don't think that when I was speaking with Councilwoman Marr and she wanted you to speak, really, my questions were mostly government related, but I thank you very much for taking your time today to be with us.
One more
Continue
question,
to
Mayor.
find- I'm not done.
Did you ask the
I'm not done.
question?
I'm not done.
Okay.
Continue to find as many grants as you possibly can for Cerevel and for the taxpayers because you're doing a fantastic job. I did have concern about the process because we had you can understand probably now, we were being told that the money was already awarded. And then we were being asked to turn around and do submitting for an application. And then after that, we were actually putting the resolution in place to authorize the submission that had already occurred. So you can see how in the public's eye, it looks kind of backwards at times and concerning. So I appreciate your explanation for that, Steph.
Of course.
Okay.
Stephanie, can the plans be amended in any way? I know that was a question. I don't think I
yes.
heard that question asked to you.
As I am unaware of how the money was appropriated, I can only give my uneducated guess, and I would say that no, that they cannot unless there is a possible amendment course to take, and it would have to be an official amendment to the grant itself. But I cannot say for sure because I do not know the process of which the contract that was put together to appropriate these funds.
Is there a way that you could find that out definitively and let our business administrator know?
I will definitely do the best I can. I'll reach out to New Jersey Department of Community Affairs tomorrow and give Denise an update as soon as possible.
Thank you so much.
I just have a question, not really a question. Yaman. Can we do this in phases, not change the overall plan? But if we don't have enough money to complete the entire project, since this is supposed to be 2 fields and a parking lot, that we could do the 1 field with this money. And then if we get any more, we do not have to do the entire $5 million project. We can do what we can of this project with the money that was given to us. And that could include the engineer's fees too. That can come out of that money.
Engineers' fees are eligible, so that can come out of this money. I do not know, again, because I don't know, I don't have the exact appropriation understanding. However, amendments may be able to be made, but as the money is being appropriated over time, I do believe that yes, it would be understandable to go
Do it in
about
phases.
Phases. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Nice
Steph.
talking to you.
It was good to talk to you. Please get that information. I know you might not have as much luck. It might take you a little bit of time to get the information over from the agency that we actually submitted the grant to. Because from what I understand, what you're saying, it's really the authorizing agency that will determine whether or not that money can be appropriated to a different project. Is that correct?
Correct. It would be the NJDCA and or whatever legislative officials were involved in appropriating the money.
So I appreciate that. If you think that it would be better for also our business administrator to reach out, we can hit this from a two-prong manner, you both yourself and Denise, and we'll see who comes back with the answer the fastest. That might help. Because I know that, so sometimes you don't get the response back, but maybe the business administrator might be able to get some more information quickly. And then we can get an update as soon as possible. Once again, Steph, I appreciate that. And it is good to hear that, oh yeah, I'm sorry, we have more questions, but I'm happy to hear that engineering costs can be included within this. And that's great. There's no limit. Mr. Councilman Nanoha has a question for you, Steph.
Hello, and just want to, for clarification purposes, when it comes to the grants that, do not require resolution from, from the council, are there scenarios where maybe, and just potentially here, are there scenarios where maybe, there are funds available from the state level, maybe even the federal level, that is public knowledge, maybe, to everyone, and then you get information from residents or anyone that isn't the business administrator or the mayor and council to potentially apply? Or, are you made aware of grants to kind of pursue beyond, our governing body?
Yes.
Do you mind going into details in terms of maybe some of those grants that come to mind that we already had provisions maybe from state level or a federal level? And how you kind of get some of those informations, especially from residents. Do you mind kind of clarifying how that kind of works for you?
So residents usually do not reach out to us. That is up to the client, like the borough in themselves, how we are contacted and who our main point of contact is. However, we are always open to hearing about any opportunities that would aid your municipality. But it is usually through our main point of contact, and for Sayreville, that is the borough administrator or occasionally council members.
Okay, so you're saying that from your experience so far, you've never pursued a grant that kind of wasn't brought to your radar from someone outside of the borough, from the mayor, council, and the BA, beyond your own personal expertise in the industry?
Oh, no, we do our own research, and we have contacts that reach out to us about in government, that we're on lists that inform us about upcoming grants.
Okay.
And we're out constantly doing research based on the needs that we have been provided with.
Okay.
I'm unsure if I answered your question. I just want to make sure that.
Yeah, no, sometimes our professionals can, be part of firms, and they have other clients, who are part of other nonprofits, and they have meetings, So I just wanted to know what it was like, within the capacity of your job. So, and how you work for us in our borough, and any other potential relationships with other groups that also have interest within our borough, and the pursuit of grants. And maybe if they come to you, I just wanted to clarify if they do come to you, being that you do welcome folks to come to you within our borough. So just wanted to see if there's anything to clarify or any details that we're not already aware of. Thank you.
Of course. I just want to clarify that any correspondence that comes to me, I always make sure through the borough, I always make sure that I will inform the current borough administrator that we have been contacted, and to make sure that all correspondence are transparent.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear that commitment.
Thank you once again. I do have one more question for you. This particular grant, would this be categorized as a competitive or non-competitive grant?
For the Jerry Ust, I would say a non-competitive, as it is specifically for the Jerry Ust expansion for the borough of Sayreville.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Any other questions from the council? I think I don't want you to hang up yet. We still have, the public portion is still open, and I do see that there is a question. Steph, it may or may not have to do with you, so I'll just ask that you stay on the line.
Thank you very much for your time. I'll try not to take as much time as I did before. I was a little surprised to hear that that 500,000 came from cultural and community that's going to Jerry Ust. Can you tell us what other cultural grants we've received and that you've applied for?
So Steph, I'll ask that question on behalf of the resident. So we were made aware today that the grant came out, one of the grants came out of the cultural and community grant. Do we know of any others,
Any other
cultural grants that we have received
or applied for?
or applied for?
Firstly, I am unaware of which cultural grant is being referenced. I just want to make sure that I don't say anything false. Do you know the date that it was submitted or awarded?
Let me reference, I'm going to ask Denise. It was a community and cultural grant. This was $500,000, which was earmarked for the Jerry Ust complex. Let me see if I can get a date. Denise might be better with that, or at least a month. I forget what the month was. Was that February?
I'm
Yeah. But I'm not really asking about that. I'm asking,
Oh, if there's other
did we
grants.
get
Oh,
other
have-
I
grants
don't,
for cultural?
I don't believe so.
Did we get any, have we gotten any other community cultural grants, Steph?
Do, as I am looking through, I do not believe so. I do want to state that the New Jersey Department of Community Affairs does not specifically handle arts. It does handle recreation as well. But I do not believe that there has been community grants in the way that I believe is being referenced here.
But the fund that is called cultural and community, I assume that might be for cultural things, right?
And that's why I wanted to double check which grant this is, so I can look into see exactly what these eligible programs would be to.
Thank you for that answer. Are all grants exclusive of professional costs?
No, each grant is will have their own set of eligible costs, and occasionally that they will be ineligible.
Okay, also, and did you submit the $850,000 grant for the Wellfield security?
What year was that? That's going back.
Before we got her.
That's going back quite a few.
Started 2020.
Yeah, our contract began in
She started 2020.
Yeah, their contract began in 2020.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. I appreciate your answers.
Thank you again, Steph. We do have another question from another resident, so just stay with us. And there's one online. Go ahead. No, I'll have you go on.
Frank Bella, 5 Keenan Street.
Mhm.
Change the focus a little bit here. There's an opportunity here in the near future. You know, we talk a lot about borough business and how things are done. The key position in the borough is the borough administrator. We currently have an acting business administrator. I assume we're recruiting for a full-time business administrator. Everybody up here is a part-time council person. You know, I think you make $5,000 or $6,000 a year. If you divide that by the amount of hours you put in, you're. Well, I wanted to say maybe you got a cost of living adjustment.
No cost.
But, you know, it comes far below what minimum wage is. So we have an opportunity to recruit a quality business administrator, which, you know, in my opinion, should be an ethical person, far distant from any local political bosses. It would be nice to get a real quality candidate. If I was a quality candidate, I wouldn't touch this town, you know, with a 10-foot pole. But I think that doesn't relieve the obligation to try and find somebody who can fix this stuff. And I hope, Mayor, before you leave office, that we can have such a person in place.
From your lips to God's ears, I don't know where we are with that process. I had heard this this afternoon, late this afternoon, that there were already interviews being held. I believe maybe Denise, you can give an update on where we are with that process.
Myself, Councilwoman Novak, and Becky Garbowski met with 5 potential prospects, so to speak, that all have experience in the business administration field. I believe Becky sent out an email this afternoon. I'm not sure.
Yes, today at 3:56 to all of us.
Candidates that we were recommending to the mayor and council. I'm not sure if all the council and the mayor got a chance to read that email.
That's where I got it from, yeah.
That's
That's
where-
where, that's where I
okay,
got my info
good.
from.
And that's where we're at right now. So it's probably going to go on to second round, hopefully with those individuals between the mayor and the council, being we only had 1 council member in the original interviews.
Did we do a statewide
Yes,
search?
it was posted on the League of Municipalities website, which is a very renowned website for help wanted ads and everything within a lot of the munis in the state. And it's also was on the Cerebral website.
But we have people who are detached from local and county.
I hope so.
I believe so.
Okay,
I hope so.
that's good to hear. Thank you.
I can only believe, Frank. I don't know for sure, but I can believe so.
Thank you.
Thanks, Frank. I do have a member online, so let me take a look at what that number is. Its telephone number 1482 is the last 4 digits. Please state your name and address for the record.
Mayor, Council Professionals, it's Karen Bieberts, 9 Burlington Road. I'm calling you obviously as a resident, but yes, Jim did mention that I am the chairman, or he mentioned the chairman of the GOP. And we've been striving for transparency and accountability for years. I know particularly the last 2.5 years since I've been involved. We've definitely trying to make strides in help bringing some of that to fruition. We've done a lot. I love this town. You guys all know my history. My family's been here for over 160 years, many, many, many generations. I love doing community outreach. As a business person all my life, I was involved in lots of that. I guess I brought some of that to the Republican Party. And, politics is great, and maybe the chairman only should worry about a campaign, but I do worry about our town very sincerely. In an effort to provide transparency, we've held a little meeting with the chief with the marijuana laws last year. We had a TNR expert in another meeting. The Board of Ed candidates most recently were invited to our last meeting, and we open it up to the public before our business meeting starts. Again, in an effort to try to provide transparency. One of the big acronyms that fly around is pilots. And I've, tried doing some research on it, but it's very involved. And I had reached out to see from Mr. Samuels if we could do something for the community like that. And he said, well, not the politics. I said, well, maybe both the organizations, again, could come through because, yes, we are political opponents, but there got to be common ground, that purple in there. So maybe the council could bring forth that idea and perhaps have a special meeting one night on pilots for the residents and, even for themselves to I'm sure there's always a lot to learn about pilots, and it's something I think that gets thrown around a lot. And I think we need to know, what it is and what it entails and when it's good and when it's not. So we can all make better decisions. But I have one more question regarding 216 Ernstine Road. I was wondering if there's been any kind of clearance of occupancy issued there.
It's my understanding, yeah, hi, Karen, it's Michael. It's my understanding that there's been a TRC meeting and they are, I believe, applying to the zoning board at this point in time. Is that accurate, Jay?
Could you explain what TRC is?
Oh, that's, I'm sorry. The Technical Review Committee has met with the attorney for the applicant. And it's my understanding, Jay, that the next step is to apply to the zoning board. Is that accurate?
Correct. They are indicating they're going to come in with just a use variance application, not a site plan. So they're bifurcating, just looking for a use variance. So they're going to put an application in to attempt to go through and get scheduled for a hearing.
Yeah, so you'll probably see that hearing sometime in the month of November, Karen.
Okay, yeah, no, I was just concerned from a liability standpoint because the last documentation I have via an Oprah request indicates that there is no clearance of occupancy. So if someone were to get hurt or say, something went wrong with the electrical from the lighting hanging in the trees and none
Yeah,
of
I know.
those-
I know code has,
Would the borough be liable for allowing
Yeah.
them to occupy when they clearly don't have a, CO?
I know code has been issuing citations, and I know that has been the subject of discussion. So based on my discussions with Kirk Mick, it's clearly that the code officer has been on top of this and is moving this matter forward in the appropriate arena.
So,
Thanks.
Mayor, I hope there's an opportunity that the council and you might consider doing some kind of seminar session for the residents on pilot programs. But that's all. Thank you for taking my question.
Thank you very much, Karen. Okay, anybody else from the public? Ken?
Ken Olszewski, 108 North Edward Street. Not often am I speechless, but tonight I'm speechless after what I heard from Mr. Robinson standing up there. And by the way, I certainly demand equal time to what Mr. Robinson had.
Oh, come on,
Make sure we do.
Come on, Ken. I love you, Ken.
I'm going to deviate from what I wanted to talk about tonight from a little bit of what I heard here. And, I think now everybody knows my background a little bit. One or two people, by the way, a few meetings ago sent me, and I can't why you go through that one. I go through it because I know the mayor knows, and I know Mary, you know it, but I know some of the people, new people, had no idea who I am. And I'm not bragging about it. I'm not that kind of guy. I really don't care. I've got boxes of awards stuffed in a closet that I've gotten from fire departments, from professional organizations, and blah, blah, blah. So so you have an idea of a little bit of the background I have. And what I want to talk about, from what I heard earlier, is a little bit about ethics. And I'm going to tell you what I've done. I'm not trying to impose what I've done in my career on you, but maybe you'll take a tip from it here or there, and maybe it will help, especially in regard to what we've heard tonight. I mean, my quote from Shakespeare, "There's something rotten in the state of Denmark." And obviously, we know that from what we've heard. There's a lot wrong. I want to talk, as I said, that when I sat on the planning board, and I sat next to the seat next to Jay, where our councilman said, and Stanley Sumsky came before the board. I mentioned at a meeting a month or two ago, Roosevelt School. He was knocking down Roosevelt School to build those 10 or 12 houses. I said right there. And when I heard what was on the agenda, I said, I'm going to recuse myself here. I've got a conflict. And next to me was the attorney, Gary Schwartz, who we had for years at planning board, a very fine attorney. And he said to me, "What's your conflict, Ken?" And I said, well, when I run for office, Stanley Sumsky, I see him out there putting up 4x4 signs for me. I didn't really even know him all that well. And the attorney said, "Oh, that's not a conflict." I said, well, you know what? It might not be a legal conflict, but it's a moral conflict. And to me, I'm getting the hell out of here. I'm going down and sit down. And that's what I did. When I sat, Mr. Robinson talked about it. We had agenda meetings on Monday night and council meetings on Wednesday night, and the agenda was in room 310. Probably a half a dozen times, it started talking about something I didn't like. I said, "Excuse me, I'm going to leave right now. When you get done with this topic, call me back in, because I didn't get elected to wind up in jail." And of course, they said, "Oh, no, Ken, you misunderstood. You misunderstood." When I was on the MCOA for 5 years as a commissioner, and the MCOA was started in 1950. So it's been 72 years. At that time, I was a Republican. I am the only Republican in the history of the county to ever sit on the MCOA. And they have 7 commissioners from Middlesex County, one from Union and one from Somerset, because they do a little business with both of those counties. Only commissioner in history. So you can imagine what I got on there. The headlines in the papers read, Chief Critic appointed commissioner. Meetings will never be the same. So I sat there kind of like, not to the commissioners, got along fine with them, to the management. It was kind of like the fox sitting up there with the chickens in the chicken coop. When we sat here on the council, because I was partly there at the same time, as soon as I heard somebody mention MCUA, I said, excuse me, I'm going out in the hall until it's done. I think for your own personal reasons and for the borough, you want to take a little closer look at that, because there's nothing wrong with not only recusing yourself from a vote, from one a discussion also, because when you're in a discussion, kind of like jury duty, if you're in a discussion, you're influencing, you could be influencing the guy next to you. And you know, that's a common thing with jury duty, why they throw people out. So it's just a bad setup, and trying to unwind some of this stuff. And I rarely mention names when I come up here, if you notice, and I'm not going to do it tonight either. But I can tell you, I talk to people. Some of the stuff I said here about 3 meetings ago, when I started out with the councilman that pled guilty, worked for Bloomberg and pled guilty to bribery and the embezzlement. And I told that to somebody from this town. I told them on the telephone, you should clean up your act, because everybody knows about this in town. Nobody is being fooled. Unfortunately, things probably would have been a lot different if they had listened to me. I hope some of the tapes that they allegedly have at the prosecutor's office will show me on tape, because that's what they'll show me, as having said, clean up your act, it smells. So it's obvious we need to do a better job on ethics and to unwind these things that have gone on. It's going to take a long time, and it's going to take a lot of effort on people's parts. And I hope that perhaps you'll listen to a little bit of what I said, go home and think about it. And when a topic comes up, don't be afraid to recuse yourself, to sit down. So I don't only do that in my professional deal here as elected office or appointed office. I did it in business too. You know, you have all kinds of things. You know, I ran a company. I was the top person in Eastern Regional Distribution Facility for an international company. I've seen it all. I've seen the prosecutors, people come in and arrest somebody for fencing colored TVs. I've had people come when they ask for a quote, and they'll the quote on painting the building and say, well, how much do you want? I don't want anything. I just want the deal I want is for you to do a good job. So I've seen it all. I think some of you know it, maybe some of you don't. One elected official sat in my living room one time, and I said to him, I named their friends. I said, make no mistake about it. They might be your friends, but they're not my friends. I'd never tell anybody to choose for their friends, but I can tell you, I take a lot more discretion in choosing my friends. And you know the story, how they'll tell you, well, if you have one really good friend, close friend in life, you're very lucky. Well, I consider myself very lucky, because I have about 4 or 5 that if I were going away on a trip to Europe for 3 months, I could turn my house keys over to them and turn my bank records over to them, and I would never even dream they would take 5 cents from me. So I consider myself to be a very lucky guy in that regard. In addition, my famous saying is, when I wake up in the morning, if I get 2 feet on the floor and know where the hell I'm at, I consider myself a lucky person. So I've been blessed. We could all bitch, and don't forget, listen, I do it too. We all do it at times. Get very annoyed about how the Yankees blew 4 games in the World Series. Big Yankee fan for years, but that's the bottom line. If you have good health, and I've, knock on wood, could change tomorrow, you're only as healthy as your next doctor's visit, is my saying. But I've been blessed with very good health, and I just have always done the right thing. I'm not a saint. Did things wrong along the way, as everybody does, make mistakes. But I've certainly been an ethical person, and I like to look at that. I don't have to be the most popular guy in the room, because I will speak up, and some people don't like when you speak up. But I have no problem in speaking up if something's happened. Just going to switch to one other quick thing and tell you, went to the senior center a couple of weeks ago, and I came out of there and I shifted over to the place in back of the senior center, because as chairman of the housing authority, my people are getting calls regarding the place, and we've never been told a thing about it. I stopped in after that to see Jessica, and she gave me a phone number, which I gave to my people. So if they get, it says, right, it tells you somewhere to write to this place in North Brunswick. Well, that's not from 2022. That happened in 1922. Nobody wants to write that. Jessica gave me a number. When I was there, as I turned the corner, there was this big smoke coming out of the barrel works. It looked like something would come out of a stack at a company or out of a power plant or something like that. My God, black smoke, right? So I went in, I looked, just looked around the parking lot of the place, and I come out, and it was going full blast. I called Dave Samuel, and I heard a little bit about this. I've known the barrel works from when I was on the council. That people talked about it, and I went down and looked at it. But what the hell is going on, David? And he said that they have a permit for handling hazardous waste. And it would appear that they were burning stuff that didn't look too good. There's a big sign on the property as you turned in to go to the place from the DEP. And it gave the names of people on the project. So I called and was wondering if this was part of the barrel works thing. And I've never been a big fan of the DEP, but give credit where it's due. They did call me back in about a week after a second call. And it had nothing to do with the barrel works itself, which I will continue to explore, but I wanted to tell you here tonight. But what's regard is, years ago, there was train track through that property. And the DEP person said the railroad used to take and pour oil on near the tracks to eradicate the weeds. And in that oil was some toxic things like arsenic. So they have a cleanup, which is apparently going to remove the dirt in the next few weeks. But I want you to know there is hazardous waste being burned, as far as I know anyway, that next to this place, the place. As I was pulling in there was a school bus coming out of there. If I was going to live at the place, I think I'd want to know a little bit more about what goes on at the barrel works than rely on a permit from the DEP. And I'm going to try to pursue that. I want to let you know about it too. So maybe it should be pursued from this end, but it seems strange, and it seems to be an odd place in back of the senior center next to a whole new complex, et cetera. And although it's going to be built by Kaplan, that there should be burning hazardous waste. I wanted to relay that to you, and so that you don't think I just come here to complain. I want to change the subject a second and tell you, I had a problem with a wheel on my garbage can like I've had before, most people have had. I called the sanitation department, and as I tell you, the girl who answered, unfortunately, didn't get her name, but she was just so pleasant, took care of it for me, which I expected would be done, but she was just a very pleasant individual. I also want to tell you while I'm here, that most of my contact in the borough is probably with the clerk's office, and I've had very good luck with talking with Nicole and the work that she's done. Every time I've contacted her, she's always has a good attitude, takes care of what I want. And who's the new girl there, Jess? Jean Marie, is it? Another, yeah, very good. Does very good attitude, done good work. I try not to bother Jess that much, but I've dealt with her in the past and not leaving her out. She's done the same thing. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ken. All right. For the record, I let you go as long as you want it, Ken. All right, ladies and gentlemen, with that, I see nobody else from the public that wishes to speak, and I have a motion to close the public.
I'd like to make a motion to close the public portion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion
Motion
to,
to adjourn. Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Very good. Any need for bathroom?
Yes.
Yeah, go. Go ahead. I'm gonna be joining you in a sec, I'm sure. All right. Yeah, no, go ahead. I just need to straighten.
That's right. You only pick as many as you need.
Good evening. I'd like to start the agenda meeting with a salute to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Take notice that this agenda meeting of the mayor and council being held this 24th day of October 2022 has been advertised and posted in accordance with Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975. Councilpersons Conti.
Here.
June 4.
Here.
Mar.
Here.
Novak.
Here.
Noha. Roberts.
Here.
Okay, old business. We have ordinance 33-22. Councilwoman Novak.
No, it's, we just introduced it tonight. That's all.
Public hearing at the next meeting.
All right, we're moving forward to committee reports.
Okay. You want me to start? Okay, I make a motion to approve the minutes and departmental reports as listed on the agenda under A 123.
Second.
Under B, beauty shop application. Anybody have a
Second? No.
No. Anybody have a problem? And then under C, request received from the Golden Age Development Group, and about a performance bond release, and we're going to refer that to the borough engineer for a report at the next meeting. Thank you, Jay.
Oh, can I ask one question about the
Sure.
beauty shop on Main Street? We have no rules that require businesses to be separate from one another. I just wanted to make it clear because we did have a question. I want to make sure that those who had that question understood that the council has no power to determine where a business may or may not go. So I just wanted to add that for the record. It was looked into. We did get the answer, and that is the answer.
We're all gonna look real good in town. There's a lot of beauty shops and barber shops going up.
Work, so. And as a committee report, I'm going to concentrate on how wonderful the Historical Society's Sandy 10 years later was on Saturday. I thought to myself at first, oh my God, I'm going to run in there and leave. What can we talk about for 4 hours? it was real, I stayed for the majority of the time. I didn't stay for the closing speeches, but it was really very nice. I mean, you had so much time to walk around and look at all the displays. And I was here through that. And I was still astounded by some of the pictures. I had forgotten some of the stuff. And the people that came to talk, whether they be residents that have lost their homes, or we had the Lieutenant Governor from back then, Kim. Thank you. She came and spoke because she was around at the time. Father Ryan even came back because he was the first one to open up without any power, the parish center. And we, things were being donated there, everything from toothpaste to soap to everything. It was heartening I actually started to feel those feelings that I felt back then when the community came together. And one of our council people, Lisa Eicher, she was on the council at the time. Let me tell you, she took the bulls by the horn. I wish she could. She lives in Florida now. I wish she could have been there to see how nicely everybody talked about her, because she was at that community center when it was at OLV's. And then when the donation started to get so much, Jimmy Gillette opened up their warehouses, and she was there all the time helping people, even if it was just a hug. So I'd like to thank everybody that was involved in that. And I'd like to personally thank Lisa for all of the work she did back then. And Dan Frankel too. Dan Frankel was a BA for just a couple of months. And all that he did, I mean, he was practically living here during that time, and all the paperwork that was involved in the buyouts and getting equipment from Woodbridge to just clean up people's belongings. And I mean, I really forgot all those things, that the sanitation men were almost religious with their picking up people's stuff at the curb. They weren't tossing things. They were trying to show a little bit of respect for these people that their whole lives were being thrown out at the curb. So it was a great thing, and it really only goes to prove the heart of Sayreville, and it was Sayreville strong. Thank you.
Well said.
Okay, thank you very much. Anything else, Councilwoman Novak?
No progress, Mayor.
Okay, let me just scroll back up here. We're going to move on now to planning and zoning. Councilman Anoha, please.
Mayor, zoning code enforcement for the months of September.
Is there a second?
Second.
Continue.
We'd also like to receive and file B1 for notice of public hearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay,
Thank you all.
committee reports, any comments?
No additional, but we're looking forward to the upcoming committees in the next weekend, next few weeks.
Thank you very much. Then we're going to move on to public safety. Councilwoman June Ford.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. I move the following minutes / reports be received and filed. A through 1 through 3 through 4, sorry. A1 through 4.
Is there a second? I'm sorry. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Donna.
Okay, I move the following minutes / reports be received and filed. B1.
That's just approval
To
or
be
deny.
denied.
To be approved.
Any questions or concerns regarding that? Okay, continuing.
Thank you. And the notice of retirement received from Mr. Jose Aro as the patrolman effective of January 1st, 2023.
That one we'll need a second for. Thank you. And committee reports?
Committee reports, I actually would like to thank our BA for reaching out to the EMS. We do have reports. I believe we sent it out to our mayor and our liaisons, Councilman Onoha, Councilwoman Mar should have gotten them also. And we also like to appreciate our acting interim, also Chief Plumacher for also being awesome. And I'm pretty sure that some of you have seen the slowdown in Sayreville sound signs with Sergeant Braille. You can pick them up at the police headquarters if you want to put them on your lawn so that it can raise awareness also. And also, I would like to also appreciate everyone and happy Diwali Day to all our Indian residents. We also like to appreciate them and their businesses and their services, even in our town, and we appreciate everyone. And for my committee, everything is progress. Court is in session. They've been holding 20 virtual courts, moving violations, 432. I've noticed that in the police report, the crime rate has gone, the theft has gone slightly down. which is still a work in progress. It's still high, but it's going down slightly. And other than that, there's progress on every side.
Thank you very much for that as well. Let's move on now to Public Works. That's Councilman Conti, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I move the following minutes and reports be received and filed. Letter A, number 1.
Second.
As far as committee reports, at some point soon, I'm going to need to meet with the Public Works guys about their trucks for the upcoming winter season. Looks like George was talking about today. Salt truck is down and a sanitation truck is down. We'll need to get together to figure out what kind of shape we're in and what the plans are for moving forward. If we think we'll be okay, or if we need to do something about that. I know he said he was going to look into perhaps leasing something, but I'm sure Denise, whatever he does, he'll come speak to you about as well. But we may need to work something out if they're in dire need, but we'll see. Just found out about that today. Not that they were in great shape to begin with, but he just let me know about the 2 trucks going down. Second, Mary, I just want to echo exactly everything you said about the Historical Society and Superstorm Sandy 10 years later. They really did a great job. Frank and Jane Terzino, Art, et cetera, the team that they have there, they really did a nice job. The speeches that went on, I wasn't as intimately involved at the time. I was a little bit removed from a lot of things, and I was on the other side of town. So, but we felt it. I just didn't feel it as much, and they really were impactful conversations, which I appreciated. And Assemblywoman Lopez and Senator Vitale and Kim Guadagno as well.
Craig was there too.
They really, I didn't see Craig. Craig was there. Good. They had a really good showing. A lot of people there. I did miss the video. Hopefully they post that somewhere, but I was just.
Online now.
It is online.
Yes. Okay,
yes.
good. I was just happy to be there. They really did a great job, and I'm glad a number of people showed up, which was terrific for them. So I'm very happy. And then last thing, as well, happy Diwali to those celebrating. I hear the fireworks a little while later reminded me that shooting them off for Diwali. So happy Diwali. And that's it. Progress.
All right, thank you very much, Councilman. We're going to move to Water, Sewer, and Environmental. Councilwoman Roberts, please.
I have minutes and departmental reports for September 2022.
Second.
And I just want to, some people have asked to give a little more detail about that. So I just want to do a couple of highlights. August water production for the treatment plant was 176.46 million gallons. We also had guardrail installation at Vernal well fields, which were needed. Our staff had painted 195 hydrants this year. During the month, they completed 229 routine, 32 emergency, 25 Vernal, and 19 South Amboy related markouts. So this group is busy, and there's also the sewer division experienced 3 sewer backups, of which 1 was a homeowner issue. And our billing and collections were mailed for cycle 3. Service calls, repairs, and meter installations generated 314 work orders. So they're working really hard, and I appreciate everything that they're doing, right? Right. Okay, and just a couple of other items of note. I attended the Historical Society event and was only able to stay there for half of it. It was amazing. I hope that they'll be able to do more of those kinds of programs in the future. And Vinny, I don't think you mentioned, I didn't hear you say it, but you had told me while we were there, you almost bought one of the homes that was, so you dodged that one, but you saw the picture of the house that could have been yours. So that was close. I did want to talk about the pilot, the interns that are working with the clerk's office. And I do want to let you know that they had, I ran into them this weekend, one of them, and absolutely loves coming here, learning about things, and specifically was intrigued and impressed by the minutes from the first meetings ever held here that are in the archives, that they're on paper. I think they're handwritten and different kind of paper, and we're just amazed by the whole process. So thank you for all the hard work. I know you've got the heavy lift since so many changes had happened. when we first started talking about the program. So thank you so much for that. The outreach for the pilots that Karen Beaver Bailey was talking about earlier as the Saraville GOP chair. One of the things we hear a lot at these meetings is about pilots, and some people say we need a pilot, others say we don't, but most people didn't understand it. And I had a great learning experience from CME about the benefits and the downfalls of pilots and how to use them appropriately and make a more informed decision. So one of the things we wanted to do was do an outreach, nonpartisan, because we didn't want to have one side or the other, to discuss with interested parties, interested residents, on what a pilot program actually was, how they can be applied, what the benefit is, and what where they're beneficial, where they're not. So I think that outreach will still be beneficial. I hope we find a way that we can still use that so we can make better informed decisions. And I think that is enough for today. I do need to learn about what the Barrel Works by the Place was all about historically, though. So
Talarico's property.
okay, so I think that's enough for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Councilwoman Roberts. We're going to move to Recreation. Council President Mark, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move the following minutes reports be received and filed. A1, Recreation Department Report for the month of September 2022.
Second.
That's all. As far as committee reports, I concur. I also attended the Sandy, 10 years after Sandy, and it did bring back so many memories. I used to live on Bamehurst. My neighbors had to be rescued by boat. I just moved away from Bamehurst, but my grandmother's childhood home on Bamehurst had to be razed. Denise, I know your family's home was on Weber. I had a 6-month-old at the time. I had to go to the fire station and Faith Fellowship Church and the Fire Academy to get water to make sure my baby had enough formula. I remember it was a crazy time. We were living out of our cars for electric and entertainment, and I have a first responder husband and father, so it was basically just my mom and I in front of the wood burning fire trying to figure things out. But it was such a well-done presentation. So much effort was put into it. All of the residents, the Webbers on Weber had their own table with pictures, and I was able to talk to Mr. Rittenhouse about the Rutgers Garden project, possibly, hopefully, bringing that back up into discussion, getting new ideas about how to bring life back to that area on MacArthur. Those plans that were originally devised no longer apply since not all of the homes were bought out. So hopefully we can do something to accommodate the area that remains. So that's for that. The vaping ordinance, Mr. Dupont, you had a meeting.
Yes.
Vape shop.
Mrs. Gruhl sent out a proposed ordinance. I'll find that.
Okay. So
The vaping, yeah.
yeah, I was concerned with the amount of vape shops that were popping up
I agree
in our
with you,
town,
yeah.
especially with the location close by to schools. And, if there's anything we could do to deter more of them.
We drafted one, so
Okay.
I'll get that for a draft next week.
Okay. I think that's it. My phone died, so my whole list is gone. Progress.
All right, thank you for that, Council President. For my remarks, ditto on all fronts. For those of us that were not able to attend the beautiful Historical Society, and just absolutely from what I was told, how respectful the Historical Society's presentation was on remembering what Saraville went through from Hurricane Sandy. And I appreciate the fact that they did make that virtually available. I think one of the things that we should do is, if possible, if the Historical Society doesn't mind, which I'm sure Frank would not, is allowing us to post that on our webpage and also put that out as a borough blast, because they really did an amazing, amazing job on that. And I remember that very similar to what you guys did. It was quite a harrowing experience all the way around. We can all talk about where we were, what we went through, and to look back and see that, yes, parts of Saraville still are marred by 10 years ago, a decade ago, is really just unbelievable. And then I think back to the communities that were completely decimated, that had even more damage. I just don't know how you move forward. it's just something that I shake my head at. I remember Lisa's efforts. I remember going over to OLV. Many of the teachers here that did not live in town came in order to help support because they had power and clothing and things like that. And the community groundswell of support and help was what Saraville's about. You know, we're a beautiful town, especially when the cards are down, we come together. And that's what I try to take out of that time period is, once again, even through COVID, we come together when it's needed. So thank you to Frank for that. Let's reach out and see if we can get the slideshow is what's available right now. Not all of the speeches, not the video, but the slideshow I know they put out publicly, so we can share that. It would be very nice. Let the people know here. A lot of my students talk about memories of that time that they don't necessarily remember completely, but their family's talking about it because my students are kind of young. But it's in their heads, and my own daughters remember that. We also had some pretty impressive police officers again that made it into the spotlight. So Angela Moat, I believe she actually graduated from one of the leadership academies, and I don't have it on my phone right now, but I want to say congratulations to her as well. As well as two of our other police officers that actually had the same acknowledgement and recreation certifications earlier in the year. And without my phone in front of me, I didn't jot them down, but we're impressive. Our departments are impressive. Do you remember Captain Kieran? Absolutely, Captain Kiernan. So it's been quite a couple of weeks, quite a week or so for Saraville. Proud of all of our employees, proud of our police department, and let's continue to keep those things moving forward and positive. Denise, the show is yours.
I'm sorry, I remember the Trick or Trunk is this Friday at the Jerry Ust Complex.
Yes, let's hope for no rain
Yes.
because it seems like we have the curse of rain whenever we try to plan an event. It doesn't,
Our poor rec director has rescheduled every single event. The ironic thing is that it has not rained for the initial day that it was planned.
yeah, we cancel and then Mother Nature says, never mind. So Business Administrator Denise Biancamano, it's your show.
Authorization to join the National Cooperative Purchasing Alliance as a participating member. Authorization to appoint John Sarika as electrical subcode official part-time in the construction office effective October 25th, 2022. Authorization to appoint Eric Kozak as clerk 1 part-time in the municipal court effective October 25th, 2022. Authorization to appoint David Earl as captain in the police department effective January 1st, 2023.
Denise? Did you want to ask something first? Go ahead.
I was on a roll.
We're doing that.
We're making a permanent appointment for a position that's not even vacated yet. And Castle Grant is the number one on the
Coming
cabinet.
next. That's on
Oh,
my.
you added it? Okay,
He's
because,
coming next. I apologize. I should have put him in first, but he was my next read.
okay,
Ready?
yeah, 'cause I
Wait.
don't have it on mine, so.
No, you
So
don't have it, but it's going on.
are you going to say you're appointing two captains? Is that what it is? Or because I was just,
One now.
so I was just asking about it. So
So
I know what we did for the provisional chief. For captain, is that just a process where they select and we don't have input in captain, or
Captain's list.
it's a captain's list and there's just one person on there, or?
no, you take usually the top person.
Because we talked about it with the chief, do we, top person, do we, not, we don't have that same kind of challenges with captain,
I
the
think
number
there's
one versus.
recommendation from the current captain, is there not?
The chief to-
From the, I'm sorry, from the chief.
The chief.
We usually get a recommendation from the chief as to who to appoint.
And I believe
off
I
of the
heard it was
list.
Castle Grant. So why is he a late addition?
So Castle Grant didn't make the list, so I'm reading it and I should have read him first, but.
All right.
Okay,
Right.
thank you.
Okay, so authorization to appoint Dominic Castle Grant captain effective October 25th, 2022. Authorization to call for a certified list for sergeants from the Department of Personnel. Authorization to purchase one lactation pod from Mamava of Burlington, Vermont through NCPA Co-op, contract number 07-105M in an amount not to exceed $23,900.
Go ahead. Everybody's got a question.
Okay,
So what
I know,
that is, I asked earlier why we needed something like
Okay,
this, which.
so it's basically a mobile room that by law we have to supply and provide for members of departments that are
Lactating.
looking to.
Wait, So that's for the borough?
Well, it's gonna be in the PD and it's portable.
Okay.
I believe we have one officer who's currently pregnant and we had other officers who were
We couldn't,
inquiring.
we couldn't convert like an
That was my
office?
next question.
Because in every office I've ever been in, they have a mother's room.
Which is also doubles as a meditation room or.
Well, not
quiet
that
room?
mother's room's got to be a mother's room typically, but I mean, whatever. But the thing is that we've always had mother's rooms. So separate fridge, locks on them, dedicated to mothers who need to
I'm right.
mail themselves.
I'm
But
not sure if there was a location though. I think Danielle and Patrick Kiernan were going back and forth and they had a hard time trying to determine an actual location within
No one's willing to give up their office.
police complex.
23,000.
Maybe.
What's really,
Because they couldn't figure out a spot. I don't know. It just seems.
For the pod.
There could be coding as far as cleanliness.
Is the pod gonna be
and
outside?
Sanitation.
no.
But they have a, so inside they got a spot for just pod,
Yeah, I believe so.
but we couldn't make.
Well, I
it.
guess they sectioned off a part of an office for it. I guess that's what happened. As long as it's not those bathrooms, because we all know how horrible they are.
I don't
I'm
know.
just wondering why the contract goes for a particular pod solution rather than another solution, I guess.
Because
Yeah.
that was the recommendation of the captain, I guess.
Right, exactly.
Yes.
Spoke.
Yes, I just think that nowadays with everything that's been going on, maybe we need to take a look at some of those things a little bit more closely, maybe more than just the one opinion of within the force. Maybe, seek some input.
I know where this is going to go. Did they tell you?
No, I don't know.
Okay.
When we reach out to the chief asking the questions about the firing
that's a
range, this
good question, like,
can
did
add
they-
this to it.
So that's right. Was the captain or the chief, did they get female in? Like, they probably did.
Bet you they got
They
you.
probably
Yeah.
did, but we don't know. And then just like, the residents talk to us about certain things. These are good questions to ask and actually know the
Beforehand.
answers to before we say, go ahead. Because if it comes up, say, did you talk to, where is it? Do you realize where it is? It's in the front. And then we look like fools.
And then did you consider this? Did you consider that? Did you? Yeah.
But Denise, anything that comes to you comes from the director of the department. So in this instance would be the police
It's
chief.
Danielle, my QPA and whatever department and everything, and they
Right.
first, and they figure out what is the best avenue to go.
Right.
And then it comes.
We
to
don't
me.
pull these ideas
I
from
will-
the
I will
sky.
reach
They're
out to
recommended
I
from
will
the
reach out to
department.
All the parties, and I will try to get additional information.
Okay.
And as soon as I get it, I will send it out to you so that you can make an educated
Okay.
decision at the next meeting.
Denise, I have to point.
Are we putting this on for a resolution at the next meeting or we're going to hold off?
No, I think we might be able to hold off.
Get the information, we could
Yeah.
probably vote on it
Leave
with
on there, and if we
an
don't have
informed
the
decision.
information,
It's up to you, whatever you guys,
Okay.
you gonna put it on?
I know.
You gonna put it on or no?
Yeah, we can put
It
on the
it would
next
allow
one,
us to
the
make an
next one,
educated
right?
decision.
Okay, I will try
On
to
the
get
next
you.
one. Not going to have to vote on it until the next meeting.
Yeah, right.
I got one other question. Lieutenant Monaco should be made permanent.
That is a gentleman, a captain who is retiring, who is currently out on
Fitzsimmons.
medical leave through the end of the year.
So he's already acting in Fitzsimmons.
January 1st of 2023. So
Correct.
so when he retires, that captain position will be.
Yes. Correct. He will retire January 1st of 2023.
So it's subject to the retirement.
Yeah,
Did we get that already?
We didn't get a letter yet.
we didn't get a letter. That's why I had
Yeah,
talked to Jess and she said that it was just going to say upon Fitzsimmons' effective retirement date, because we actually haven't gotten paperwork on it yet. What? Becky, I'm sorry. She said she was going to leave it at that because we don't actually
He's
have
already
it.
out on medical.
I
leave
know.
at the end of the year.
So this is obviously.
We didn't vote on that yet. We say, okay.
Right. Mhm.
I just.
Do we want to, so do we want to ensure we have something in hand?
Yeah.
Usually we
Do
do.
we want to make sure we have something in hand before we appoint, because this person here thinks, okay, January 1st, I'm appointed.
Subject to retirement of captain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll cover
At
our
least that's in
bases.
writing.
Right.
Yes.
Or subject to
Okay.
an
I'm
opening.
more comfortable.
If that clears us of, if that gives us direction, okay.
Right.
Denise, I just have, because there should be a permanent lieutenant that's provisional right now. Monaco.
Put him in as.
'Cause I know we got the lieutenants list too.
Okay.
And if
I'm
you,
gonna write myself a note.
Yeah, no, I know that.
yeah. Because he wants that year in grade. He violated.
Okay. Take care of that. Authorization to sell one 1997 Pierce Lance fire truck to Berkshire, New York Fire Department for $20,000.
That's all we got for that thing, 20 grand. My
I don't think,
goodness.
yeah.
No, actually, that's pretty good.
That's good.
It has some issues.
Yeah.
Well, no doubt it has issues, but
The
20,000.
pump doesn't even work to pump the water. So, I'm telling you, we usually get scrap metal prices.
Okay,
All right.
authorization to scrap one 2008 Ford Expedition VIN 1 FMFU 165X8LA 86642, which is no longer needed for public use. Authorization to award a non-fair and open contract to Gen Electric for traffic light engineering, maintenance and repairs. And authorization to purchase Wilco pumps from Rapid Pump of Patterson, New Jersey through PVSC Co-op Contract B331-7 in an amount not to exceed $39,935. And under my CFO, in your packet, you received your 2022 best practices inventory. And I'm happy to report that we scored 33 points, which means we will receive 100% of our final aid payment. And last but not least, I have a budget transfer resolution, and I'm done. Thank you.
Very well done. Thank you, Denise. That brings us all the way down to our Denise, oh wait, you're already finished. Jay Cornell, Borough Engineer. I'm sorry, when I see your name twice listed.
quite all right.
Go ahead, Jay, you're up.
Madam Mayor, 2 items. We're receiving bids before your next meeting for the next phase of your road paving project. So if everything's in order, we'd like a resolution at the next meeting awarding that contract. There's 3 roads, free information, Charles Street, Checo Court, and Wilbur Terrace. Item 2, a couple months back, you adopted bond ordinance for priority water and sanitary sewer projects that David Leitner was recommending. At this point, we're looking for authorizations to move forward with the design of those projects. So
All right.
Resolutions listed at the next meeting. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Borough Attorney.
Yeah, only that I hope your trick and treat is great and you get lots of candy. But I have no report.
Can I ask Jay just one question? Jay, corner of Glen and Deerfield, they replaced all the curbing and the grass and everything else, and the street sign is still laying on the ground being stepped on by people.
Okay.
If we could get
Bring
that.
to the
back
contractor's
up.
attention. Sure.
Thank you.
Since we're talking about street signs, something that I've noticed. So on Pulaski, they had to do some work on a telephone pole replacement. And ironically, there's 2 street signs now. Wick Drive is now there, as well as, I get confused, Schneider. So the Wick Drive sign is actually supposed to be down at the other end of Wick Drive when you come off of Main Street. So somebody decided to, and I don't know who had the strength to do this, actually physically lift it out of the ground and drag it all the way from one end of Wick all the way to Pulaski. That's pretty impressive. But it would be nice if we could get that sign put back where it belongs. It's, I don't know if people are getting confused by it, but it's kind of weird having it just sitting there on an angle.
It's probably Public Works. since-
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So Denise, that's, Jay, I'm not going to make you go out and re-cement the pole, but
Drive
thank
sign.
you. Wick Drive sign, put it back where it belongs. So we appreciate letting people know that we're over there. But it's probably confusing before Google Maps gets it. And, that's it then. I think anybody from the public, I see no public here. I see no public wanting to speak online. So motion to close the public portion.
Make a motion to close the public portion.
All in favor?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. Have a great night.